Welcome back to the channel. This is Trendy Storm and you are watching first part of What If Naruto Awaken Animus Bloodline after Sasuke Retrieval arc. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Not wasting no more time, let's start the story.
6 years after the Nine Tails Fox raid, Fire Country's Hidden Leaf Village. It was raining heavily in the Hidden Leaf Village when a 6-year-old boy sobbed while clinging to his mother, who was lying on the ground at the moment, her wounds closed, and she was trying to console her small son. "Be safe, be strong, my son. We will see each other again one day. Until then, be strong and survive. In time, you will be gifted with our bloodline and will be able to bring those who did this to justice. I love you, I love you," the red-headed, green-eyed woman said, placing her hand on his cheek and wiping away his tears. She began singing to him to soothe him at that same moment, saying, "I remember tears streaming down your face when I said, I'll never let you go." As she started the following line, "When all those shadows almost killed your light, I remember you said, don't leave me here alone. But all that's dead and gone and past tonight," the young boy clung to her even more. She continued to reassure him, looking him in the eyes as she started the next section, "Just close your eyes, the sun is going down, you'll be all right. No one can hurt you now, come morning light, you and I'll be safe and sound. Hold on to this lullaby." She said this despite how difficult it was to stay conscious. The light went out of her eyes as she died, and the young boy was unable to control the emotions and tears that were rushing through him. He looked up to see a number of men wearing odd animal masks staring at him, and he then looked up at one of them while the rain continued to pour down even more heavily. However, only one of them was the target of the angry expression on his youthful face. The gang leader, who was wearing a dog mask and had silver hair, approached the little boy and, without saying a word, punched him in the face, sending him into a state of slumber. However, for this boy, it was a place of nightmares and secrets that would eventually come to light. Water Country's Hidden Mist Village, 7 years after the Nine Tails Fox raid. As they are led in groups of 5 to their premature deaths, a man reading from a piece of parchment stands next to the gallows. Many of the people in chains are currently being led into a large courtyard where a gallows station has been set up for use. Many of the people are extremely scared as they look out upon people once they thought they could trust. Many of them who were accused were in fact bloodline users. In order to effect a timely halt to the deteriorating conditions here in the Land of Water and for the common good of all, a state of emergency has been declared for this territory, by decree of Lord Lee Sc. Dooley, representative of our daimyo, all persons found possessing a bloodline or of piracy or assisting the rebellion. As they were led on and watched as the first group was about to fall, killing them in the process, everyone in the area listened in the hopes of finding a way out of this predicament. The men then said again for everyone to hear. By decree of martial law, the following statutes and rights are hereby suspended. Right to legal counsel suspended. As he continues, all persons found guilty of piracy, having a bloodline, or aiding the rebellion, piracy, or the bloodline users shall be hanged by the neck until dead. Everyone can hear the sound of another set of people being dropped. Following this, a fresh group of people came forward to fulfill their goals. One of them was a young guy of no more than 16 years old. He was holding a small coin with 2 distinct symbols on it, one of which was an odd A, and in the middle of it was what appeared to be the emblem for the land of Whirlpool. The young man's vivid green eyes and spiky red hair revealed the unique tribe he belonged to. The Red Cross Knight and his men stole the Fox Queen from her bed, and bound her in her bones. He sang, "The seas be ours and by the power, where we'll roam," as he gazed out at the many more people. Then, as someone else started singing, "Yo-ho all hands, hoist the colors high," the executioner started to put the noose around each of their necks. The soldiers surrounding them became uneasy as everyone else started singing, "Heave-ho assassins, thieves and slaves, never shall we die." A young officer went up to them and exclaimed, "My lord, they have begun to sing, sir, what shall we do?" While the singing continued and the guards were increasingly alarmed by the situation. A few men were standing in a small area nearby, all of them watching the scene in front of them. With a single eyehole in his mask, one of the men held a red, inside cross and stated, "Nothing for now, continue with the executions." One of them only turned to his fellows as the man left, saying, "Finally, brothers, it has begun, may the Father of Understanding guide us." With a smile on his face and a regal looking chair in the middle of the group, a man thought, "First the assassins, and then I will deal with you lot in due time, But for now I need you Templars to bring me the key of 10 that the Six-Path Sage did so well hiding from me, and then maybe I can finally be with my beloved." His eyes and their various colors sent shivers down the spines of others. "Never shall we die," the young, red-headed kid said, closing his hand over the coin and bracing himself for the end, knowing that this was not finished even though he was no longer among the living. Then the executioner moved to draw the lever back. A young Naruto woke up from this strange dream and felt that it was more than that because everything was still very clear in his mind, even though he thought he would forget it soon. He then rubbed the middle of his back, not realizing the strange glowing marks on it, and tried to fall back asleep, which led to strange dreams of men in white fighting tyranny against a group wielding red crosses. The coin he had been holding then fell to the ground hard, making an almost musical note as it fell to rest. Today's hospital is located in Fire Country's Hidden Leaf Village. The 5th Hokage Tsunade's voice asked a nurse, "How long has he been in this state?" "It's been almost 5 days now, my lady, and we don't understand what is going on with him," they said as they watched a little kid lying in a bed with blonde, spiky hair and what appeared to be whisker marks on his face. "What do you mean? It's like he's in some kind of enhanced state of some kind, and it appears that what is happening in there is where time is moving faster than out here, and we've already tried to have someone go into his mind to see what is going on only for them to be shoved out, but that's not all. We discovered the remnants of a memory seal on his back that has been shattered for the lack of a better word," Tsunade said. "Has anyone tried to put a new one on him?" After being taken aback by this revelation, the nurse told Tsunade, who was now very worried about the future and already knew that she would soon have to make a horrible decision, "Yes, my lady, by order of the Toad Sage himself, but it was destroyed as well." Naruto vividly recalled a message that played on the first day of his coma, and he felt a deep sense of betrayal, particularly to people he had grown to respect. As the message started, he saw a picture of a woman with green eyes and red hair, and he felt the memory seal break on him. He knew immediately who she was. "Naruto, my son, if you are experiencing this message, then I have passed on from this world and left you alone, and for that I am sorry. But know that while I cannot be with you, I will always love you." The next picture that he saw was of a young man wearing a white jacket. "Thanks to this man, our ancestor Desmond Miles, we possess a rather unique bloodline called the Animus, which allows us to relive the memories of our ancestors as well as gain their skills and knowledge. You see, we are descending from a great order called the Assassin Brotherhood, who was charged with protecting mankind's freedom." The following picture showed a man in an odd white robe battling a man with a red cross on his chest who was heavily armed. The first ancestor he relived the memories of was Altair Ibn Lahad, a men who change everything for our order. The following picture showed a young man strolling down the market street dressed elegantly. It read, "Then he relived the memories of our ancestor Ezio Auditore, who suffered greatly at the hands of our enemies but did much good in his time." The following picture portrayed a young man growing from a child to an adult while wearing garments that appeared to have been constructed from animal parts. And finally he relived the memories of Ratonhake Tanner Connor, as he became known to many and helped birth a great nation. The following image displayed 3 additional individuals. "But they were only the beginning. Through our bloodline you will experience many more, including my memories, son. Take what you have learned from them and go back to what is left of our homeland and restore it. Find a man named Raven near Snow Country who is currently keeping something of mine safe and sound, as he can help you along your way. And remember, my son, that the sea is our ally and friend and will guide you to our homeland. Remember to relive the memories of your ancestor Edward, and if possible those of your grandmother, as it will help you and make a path for yourself as well, my son." Land of Fire, Konoha Hospital, 1 month later. When Naruto finally opened his eyes a month after slipping into the weird coma, he discovered that no one was there to welcome him or check on him. However, before he could even get dressed, 2 Anbu came in, snatched him from his bed, and carried him to the bathroom with a change of clean clothes. He realized it must have something to do with his ancestor Desmond and what had happened to him after spending so much time in bed that he had little trouble moving around. In fact, he was still trying to process what he had seen, but he chose to keep it to himself just in case. As soon as he put on the new clothes he had been given, the 2 Anbu led him out of the hospital and into the Hokage Tower. To his amazement, the elders, the shinobi, the civilian councils, and the Hokage herself were all waiting for him in their seats. As he walked into the middle of the room, he also saw a young girl with spiky blonde hair staring at him contentedly. Tsunade had no idea what was going to occur. She continued, "Naruto Uzumaki, rank genin, you now stand before this council of Konoha accused of insubordination and failure to carry out your duty, which was to bring back your former teammate Sasuke Uchiha, as well as your reckless behavior in using the nine-tailed fox's power while on the mission. How do you plead?" With a satisfied expression on his face, Naruto answered, "I am innocent, of course." The young girl, who was roughly his age, spoke before he could find any hope in this strange meeting. "Your fate has already been decided. This council has reviewed all the evidence and has come to a decision that I greatly favor, as it was what you carried that took my father from me." "And who would your father be?" he asked in a deeper tone, turning his head to gaze at her with pure satisfaction. With a harsh tone, she addressed him, "The fourth Hokage, but don't think you're beyond redemption, boy." Tsunade continued, "I'm afraid she's right, Naruto, and for that I am sorry, as I did try to stop this from happening. It is the decision of this council, not me, that you be banished from not only the Hidden Leaf but also the Land of Fire. If you return, you will be executed publicly. However, this banishment will only be for 3 years and you will be forced to return to us, but I also must tell you that the Third's Law has been revoked effective tomorrow, as you are publicly banished as well as branded with a tracking seal." The young girl was grinning shitlessly as he told her, "You should have no say in this, girl. You were supposed to be this village's hero, its savior, and you chose to ignore that duty," she said, looking him in the eyes after being taken aback by the tone of his speech. She was looking shocked at what he had just said to her. "I never asked for your father to sacrifice me, girl, and if he had been so noble he would have used you instead of me." The council members were also shocked when he continued, "None of you have my respect and never will at this rate. I was curious to discover that I have the remnants of a memory seal on my back that kept from me all these years the memories of my mother and how someone in this village murdered her in cold blood. Maybe even one of you standing in this room right now did the deed, and I have had no justice in this matter at all, and to discover that no one has tried to even solve my mother's murder sickens me to my core." As the young man went on, "So to everyone here, do your best, but remember, from this day forward you have shattered all I held close, and I will never serve any of you again. I will not bend my knee to anyone in this room, and I will fight back because I know a few things myself." Everyone who had heard about the incident became extremely worried that it might come back to haunt them and that their current plan had also backfired. "And for those of you who were involved, I will seek justice on you, even if it flows in a crimson river, if you get my point," he said, causing everyone in the room to appear worried about their foundation. "How dare you threaten this boy? You should be thankful to even be alive," was the opinion of one extremely obese council member. "You have no rights in these affairs, you fat miserable excuse for human being. And if I find out you had anything to do with the seal or my mother's death, there will be no force on this planet that will stop me from ending this miserable thing you call a life. And with that said, if anyone ever comes after me, I will end them as well. This village can fight its own damn battles from now on," Naruto said, shocking everyone by quickly closing the distance between them and smashing his nose with his fist. He then proceeded to grab the man by the collar of his shirt, literally slamming him into the table. Just before leaving, he made the decision to issue one more warning. "Oh, and as for Sasuke Uchiha, I intend to collect the bounty on his head whether he's dead or alive, just to let you know ahead of time." The young girl ran over and picked up the priceless jewel, then turned to Tsunade, who was speechless, and said, "I want someone keep an eye on him at all times that we can trust and bring him to me before the ceremony." The Hokage turned to one of her Anbu and said, "I want someone keep an eye on him at all times that we can trust and bring him to me before the ceremony." He left the room without listening to any of them, dropped the necklace the Hokage had given him, and vanished into the crowd. The Anbu gave her a nod and continued working without knowing what would happen. His pink-haired teammate and one-eyed sensei had been less than encouraging, flatly blaming him for everything, and it was evident how much he had been neglected in his overall training. He had made the decision to visit his teammates and friends before leaving the village, but he was even more disappointed and depressed after hearing them speak as he used his ancestors' unique abilities. As he felt eyes on him and his teammates, Kakashi kept talking to the other gathered Jonin and their teams. He then turned to see his lone other student leaving the pub with a dissatisfied expression on his face. "That's not very polite now, is it, Naruto? Listening in on other people's conversations. I think we should go see the Hokage about this." Naruto immediately recognized the hand that grabbed him by the shoulder as he attempted to return to his apartment, sensing that the popular people were watching him. Before he could continue, however, he and everyone else were startled when the young, blonde boy turned around and struck his former sensei in the face with a very powerful and swift haymaker, breaking his nose in the process. He then struck his arm, breaking it as well. When Kakashi was able to gather his thoughts, he looked up to see the young man with a serious expression on his face and what appeared to be tears in his eyes. "You were supposed to protect us that night, but instead you let her die. I had to watch my mother be murdered before my eyes, all because of you," he said, shocking his former pink-haired teammate, who had initially been quite happy to see him being reprimanded by their sensei, then turned into utter shock at his actions. "I don't know why my mother ever respected you. You don't even preach what you say. If you ever come after me, I will surely kill you, and as for the man who took her from me, I will find them and end them. After all, you did their dirty work and left my world in darkness," was the young boy's shocking statement to his former sensei, and he was far from done. Realizing that the seal was no longer with him, Hitaki could only stare at his old pupil in disbelief. He attempted to reason with the young man, hoping to give Jiraiya an opportunity to speak with him, saying, "Naruto, please wait." "No, I hate you," the little kid cried out, turning to face him. Then, leaving everyone stunned, he turned and dashed through the crowd before vanishing from view. There were only a handful of people in this village that he could truly trust, but he knew that going to see them would be extremely risky and that his time was running out. He also wanted no more contact with Jiraiya because the unlocked memories showed what the old pervert had done to him following the death of his mother. Before he did so, however, he made the decision to get one object that he was certain would remain in this location despite the passing of the years, and he found the small music box in the shape of an eagle, with the sign of the Brotherhood, concealed behind a wall. When he opened the box and listened to the music playing, he was struck by his memories again. He recalled the times he and his mother would sit there and listen to the music while he tried to fall asleep. The song she sang on the day of her death and the tune from the box both stayed with him as he sobbed uncontrollably. When he eventually managed to leave the town and realized that a large portion of the security was inadequate, it made the option to do so more simpler for him. Even though the Anbu were highly skilled, they could not match Naruto's remarkable stealth skills. These skills had advanced significantly after he recently relived his ancestors' memories, and he wasted no time in escaping the village as quickly as he could, knowing that they would be observing him. Using the memories he had seen because of his bloodline, he reached a small river within an hour, made hundreds of his clones, sent them in all directions, and continued on his own, following the river to the secret base his mother's great aunt had established when she first arrived in this country. In just 20 minutes, he was on the other side of a cliff without using his chakra, which could potentially reveal his location to his enemies. In a matter of minutes, he arrived at the base's entrance, used his eagle vision to open it, and entered the sanctuary. Upon entering, he was astounded by the cavern's size and its ample supply. As he moved farther into the room, Naruto saw that there were statues, storage scrolls, and books everywhere. Realizing that he could spend a long time learning to master his new abilities, he moved forward to see a small wooden chest that held the most recognizable weapons of the Assassin Brotherhood. A set of hidden blades and one hook blade. He put one of the blades on first, followed by the hook, and then he turned them on to make sure they were still working properly. However, because the hook and blades were flat and jet black in color, they did not reflect either daytime or nighttime moonlight. All he could do was smile as he saw how busy he would be getting ready for the future. Eventually, he discovered a collection of scrolls that included textiles and garments. The sword, which he knew was known as the Maelstrom, was on the wall next to the scrolls, which he had witnessed his grandmother wield in one of his recollections. When he saw a set of weapons that looked like the old guns he remembered, but seemed to be of a later design with much more force and power behind them, along with some additional Brotherhood weapons and even a shooting and training course he could use, he instantly made up to 8 shadow clones and got to work. As soon as Jiraiya, the Toad Sage of Konoha, entered the hospital room with the copycat ninja, he was shocked to see the extent of the damage done to the man in question. He was shocked to learn that one of the most significant Jonin in the village had been so easily defeated by his own student. What the hell happened to you, Kakashi? Jiraiya noticed that the elder man's blue mask had become scarlet from his beating as the copycat ninja turned to face him. A doctor was mending his arm when he said, "Naruto did this to me." This startled Jiraiya, who then questioned, "What? Are you sure about this?" "Very, and he knows about his mother's murder, and I think the seal broke." As a group of Anbu entered the room and gave him a message, the old pervert remarked, "Emotional stress. If it was strong enough, it could in theory break the seal as well as the others like a domino effect." "What is it?" said Kakashi, intrigued. She wants to see me and I think I know what it's about. As she had commanded, the Anbu teams had a good time bringing the young Uzumaki boy to the Hokage because they knew that something similar was about to happen to them. One of the Inuzuka and her nin-dog who had joined them on this assignment had followed the trail until it came to a complete stop at a river, at which point they turned to the team leader and remarked, "I didn't know he was this good." They were now unable to locate the young kid at all. One of his subordinates couldn't help but remark on the situation, "Sir, do you think he plans it all out or just make it up as he goes along?" The lead Anbu was still shocked that this had occurred to them again before there was a wide river where the smell trail had terminated. The Anbu commander looked even more shocked as he observed the Inuzuka and her nin-dog cross the river and say, "I don't know anymore." "Oh no, what is it?" When the two partners realized how severe the situation had gotten, they looked across the river. "His scent is everywhere and it's going all over the place. How is this possible?" she asked. "We know that he can make up to hundreds of them, maybe even thousands, and I bet they have his scent all over them," the Anbu commander said without hesitation. "So there's no way to know which one is the real one?" asked one of the other Anbu. "I'm afraid so, and I'm not about to waste our time looking for him in this wild goose chase. He could be anywhere. We need to get back to the Hokage right now." As she read the report on Naruto's escape, Tsunade was not pleased. She knew that everyone had significantly underestimated his abilities, but what really infuriated her was learning what the memory seal had been used for and who had placed it on him in the first place. Jiraiya was trying to figure out what had happened and what would have initially made her so angry, but she was also upset to see the young girl present because she knew that something else had happened. Needless to say, a certain Toad Sage was currently removing himself from the wall while the young blonde girl watched from the side in complete shock. With an innocent tone, he asked, "You do know that hurt a lot, right, princess?" With a fairly beautiful voice that did nothing to conceal her rage at him at the moment, she said, "Oh, shut up, you old pervert. I want to know why you put a memory seal on the back of Naruto's back and covered up the fact that his mother was murdered by someone in this village?" His face went pale as soon as she spoke those things, and he was going to recommend that the young girl leave the room when his former teammate grabbed him by the throat and yelled, "Oh no, pervert, she stays right here," as she's also an issue at this moment, in a much deeper tone. Now that she knew she had contributed to whatever had occurred, Jiraiya sensed his advancing years. "There are things happening here, Tsunade, that are much bigger than any of us, but how do you even know about the seal?" she asked. Then, in an even more threatening tone, she said, "Not a whole lot at first, at least not until the seal itself broke and it was revealed to me. To whoever is reading this scroll, please understand the terrible decision I was forced to make to protect one of the people under my care," Jiraiya said as she moved forward and picked up the scroll. "The council and one of my students feel that this young man's memories are just too dangerous to be left intact. Although I have been compelled to follow this strategy, I do not think it is effective or even a good concept because, to be honest, it appears to be helping a particular set of people. They all worry that if he is not neutralized in some way, he will become a terrible menace to the town. Even though the law in our country and village requires me to serve this sentence, I have another plan in place to make things right, which my other student intends to carry out on his own, disregarding the potential repercussions. My alteration to the seal will be released over a longer period of time before my student can even get to seal, which will give young Naruto a fighting chance, even though my student intends to release the seal gradually once he has been a shinobi of this village for a while. I am afraid that my student will not give this young man everything back. Since no one will try to solve his mother's murder or even help them without some sort of agenda, I am using my skills in the sealing arts to make sure that everything is returned to him in its entirety. I am aware that this was not what we agreed upon, but I cannot continue to victimize him. I only hope that my actions have been successful in giving him the second chance that this village has so desperately tried to deny him. Even if it takes a crimson river of blood, he will be able to find the people who caused his agony and bring them to justice thanks to his special lineage." After reading the note, Jiraiya and the young girl were stunned by what they had discovered and exclaimed, "Oh my god, sensei, what have you done?" In response, Tsunade said, "It seems the old professor didn't trust you enough to execute your plan." She couldn't help but laugh. "This was my responsibility to bear, Tsunade. I had no intention of keeping everything from him, I just needed more time so he wouldn't be unstable. So that's why you didn't even see him for all of these years until now. I know my excuse, you old pervert, but what is use? And who the hell is she anyways? She claims to be the fourth's daughter," she responded. "What did you do, Akima?" he asked, turning swiftly to face the young blonde girl and firmly seizing her arm before drawing her to him. "I just wanted." Even his former teammate was shocked when he yelled, "What the hell did you do, granddaughter?" "Granddaughter, how?" As you know, Tsunade Minato was set to marry Kushina when he first found out that she was pregnant with Naruto, but many of the guys took him out to celebrate that night, and that's where he met my daughter, he said, looking into both of their eyes sincerely in an attempt to find a starting point. "The two of them were old friends thanks to me, but that night they got so drunk that one thing led to another, and as can see, Tsunade, my granddaughter, was conceived that very night," he said, to the attentive attention of the two women. After glancing at the young child, Tsunade remarked, "I have a feeling that Kushina was beyond angry when she found out about this." "Oh, she was, and then called off the wedding as soon as she found out about what had happened. But needless to say, she did not blame my daughter, she blamed Minato, and as you can imagine, he did not take it too well. I bet. However, the three of them worked something out, but as you all know, all hell come to us sometime later in the Nine Tails attack upon the village, and you know the rest. So I take something happened to her mother and their carefully laid plans went to ruin?" Tsunade asked after being unable to respond with much more than a nod. "She had a set of injuries that proved to be too severe even for someone like her, and after giving birth she passed away, leaving my granddaughter here in the care of her aunt," said her former teammate, who had closed his eyes in agony before speaking. Before the Toad Sage could say anything more, however, a group of fire samurai from the capital of the Land of Fire entered the Hokage's office with a clear goal in mind. They grabbed the old pervert and told him to stay put. A more regal-looking man then entered the room and gave the old pervert a disgusted look before saying, "Jiraiya of the Sannin, by order of the Lord of the Land of Fire, you are hereby ordered to report to him at once due to the reporting banishment of one Naruto Uzumaki. This order is non-negotiable and will be enforced by any means necessary. Lady Hokage, the Fire Lord would like to extend his gratitude for attempting to stop the banishment and wish to inform you that you will have all the support to do with the Civilian Council if you decide to take action against them for this travesty," said Jiraiya, who was completely stunned and could only nod his head in compliance as he left the room with the fire guard. The handsome man then turned to face Tsunade and gave her a respectful handshake before continuing, "This is a travesty." He turned to the young girl and said, "As for you, young lady, for instigating all of this you shall be punched. We are also aware that your mother's sister was primarily responsible for this action, as she will face the most severe punishments that we see fit to give her. You however will have to deal with the Lady Hokage here, as she will decide your fate." Tsunade nodded her head and thanked him. He then left the room, closing the door behind him, leaving the young girl in shock, wondering what she had done. Land of Fire, Nest Harbor, Phoenix Township, 3 days later. Naruto made the decision to spend at least 3 days in the cave, where he would work on his new attire, practice with some of the available scrolls and equipment, and get a feel for his hidden blade and hook blade. He also took some time to acclimate to the available firearms, and after a day, he was proficient with the pistols, though he was aware that he could still get better. He made the decision to leave the country as soon as possible because he knew that staying in the Land of Fire would only make things worse for him in the long run. He decided to go to one of the many places he had helped during his brief shinobi career, but he changed his mind after considering the Land of Wave because it was still too close to Land the Fire and would be among the first places they would search for him. He then recalled his mother's warning and made the decision to journey anonymously, knowing that it might be his only chance to escape the country without being apprehended, to Snow Country, now known as the Land of Spring, in order to locate this man named Raven. He had spotted red lines in his hair when he woke up, and he had used a basic makeup kit to cover up the whisker like marks on his cheeks as he went about the town. He had even devised a clever pseudonym, calling himself Fox, asking for his first name, and providing his family name, Kenway. While strolling around the town, he saw that many fire samurai were patrolling the area and were clearly searching for someone. It was at this point that he saw wanted posters featuring his picture. He approached it out of mild interest and read Naruto Uzumaki, who was wanted for interrogation. Any information regarding the whereabouts of this young man would be highly rewarded. He unconsciously tore the wanted poster off the wall, crumbled it in his palm, and tossed it into a nearby dumpster since he was reliving so many memories of his ancestors. He repeated this action multiple times before reaching the wharf where the ships were. "Excuse me, sir, do you know if there are any vessels that are headed to the Land of Snow by any chance?" He then approached the harbor master. After giving him a startled look, The harbor master realized what he was talking about and said, "Oh, you mean the land of spring?" "Yes, so far as I have heard, but I want to see it with my own eyes as I used to live there long ago before all of the trouble started. Are there any ships headed there at this time?" "That one, the Blue Sea, is headed that way, and I hope you find what you're looking for," said the harbor master, pointing to a two-masted ship. After saying, "So die, sir, and thank you," he then proceeded to the ship in the hopes of finding the enigmatic raven his mother had mentioned and gaining safe passage. The Congo seemed to be fire country sake, which he knew from his mother was a highly valued commodity among the other nations of the elemental nations, or as the seagoing area had come to be known among its many sailors, the Neo-Caribbean. As he got closer to the ship's loading ramp, he saw that many of them were quite busy loading large quantities of cargo. Seeing a young man standing around waiting and seeking someone to talk to, one of the sailors, who seemed to be rather elderly, decided to find out what the young traveler wanted and went up to him, attracting his attention as he did so. "May I help you, young men?" he asked. Naruto said, "Oh yes, I am looking for passage to the land of spring, sir." "Oh, and where are my manners? My name is Fox Kenway." Naruto was taken aback by his serene and gentle nature, as it was not something he was genuinely accustomed to. As he gestured for the young men to follow him on board the ship, the elderly sailor took a moment to consider his name and thought it was rather intriguing. "Well, it's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Kenway. My name is Solomon Dornas, and I'm the current quartermaster of the Blue Sea. Now, please allow me to introduce you to our captain." As he followed Solomon to the back of the ship, where the captain's quarters were, Naruto nodded his head politely. Solomon then tapped on the door, waiting for a response, which allowed them to enter the cabin. "Mr. Fox Kenway, allow me to introduce you to the ship's captain and his first mate, who also happened to be his daughter, Captain Cyrus Rail, and his daughter Sordiara." At first glance, Naruto saw an older man with a strong goatee and slicked back black and gray hair. Next to him was a much younger woman who looked to be just entering her 20s, with long black hair and violet eyes. After giving the captain a respectful nod, Naruto heard him say, "Tell me, young man, what do you want with me and my ship?" He continued with a confident tone, "I seek passage to the land of snow, I mean spring, sir. I used to live very long time ago, and I have the money to pay for passage, but I also wouldn't mind catching up with my sailing skills again if you allow me to also be a temporary member of your crew." Cyrus nodded his head in agreement before he spoke. "That can be arranged, Mr. Kenway. I'm actually curious to see her abilities on my ship, but I know how to inform you that we will not be heading to the land of spring right away. I have several other ports of call to attend to first. Is all right with you?" "It is most generous, sir. I must also ask of you, sir, do you know if someone named Raven has survived in the land of spring?" Naruto stated with a sincere smile. When the captain realized who this might be, he became even more amused and remarked, "I might know someone by the name, but we will have to get the land of spring first." The captain said to Solomon, "Mr. Salt, please show this young man to one of the passenger cabins so he may deposit his belongings and then take on deck and begin his refresher course on how to sail a ship. He also knows nothing of our own vessel, so please teach them what he needs to know to operate her properly." Naruto was now hopeful that he would be able to meet this man. "Yes, Captain, follow me, Mr. Kenway." "Do you think it's him, father?" Naruto asks her father as she leaves the cabin after turning to face the captain and bowing to him. He looked her in the eyes and said, "I believe he is one of them, my daughter, but what disturbs me is that he is clearly fleeing the land of fire. Something has happened to him and we will not push the issue at this time." The capital of the land of fire is a volcano city. 3 days had passed since Jiraiya was brought before the fire daimyo by armed samurais who were directly ordered by the Fire Lord to make sure the Toad Sage not only cooperated but also did not cause them any trouble. Nevertheless, he had now given the situation a lot of thought. Although Jiraiya had to acknowledge that his patience was wearing thin as he sat partially on the couch being carried to the feudal lord's waiting room, he managed to control himself despite the fact that he was well aware that even he was no match for the sheer number of bodyguards and elite samurai that lived in the Fire Lord's home. The door suddenly opened, revealing a young guy dressed fairly royally, leaving the chamber and then standing right in front of him, saying, "Jiraiya of the Leaf, the Fire Lord will now see you." With a pair of glasses on, the Fire Lord himself sat behind his desk reading a number of reports that did not seem to lift his spirits at all. The old pervert got up from the couch he had been sitting on and entered the room, hoping to find out why he was here in the first place, but at least he had some idea of why, including his cursed luck because things have not gone as planned. Before speaking, the Fire Lord removed his glasses, sat back in his chair even more to make himself comfortable, and examined the elderly pervert. "Tell me, Jiraiya, do you know why I have made sure that you were to wait to see me this long over this matter?" "I do not know, sir. I made you wait so I would not have you executed right away upon seeing you, and do you know why that is?" The Fire Lord said again, letting out a little grunt of irritation. "Then perhaps you can tell me what you think this is all about. Please enlighten me," the man said again, and the old pervert could only nod his head negatively. "I assume it has something to do with Naruto Uzumaki," Jiraiya said, feeling the fear that had taken hold of her spirit return with a fury. "You assume? Yes, my lord, I assume that is why you wished to see me?" The Fire Lord then turned to him and replied, "And you would assume correctly. Do you have any idea of what kind of political backlash we are going to get because of not only your decision to seal his memories so long ago but also of the decision that the Hidden Leaf Councils has made regarding him, which has resulted in his banishment order? So maybe you can tell me what the hell is really going on?" Knowing that a lot would be disclosed today and that he would be fortunate to escape this with both his life and his limbs, Jiraiya remarked, "It's very complicated, sir." Entry from Uzumaki Naruto's personal diary or log. "It goes without saying that I was both fascinated and eager to see if I could actually grasp the information that had been passed down to me due to the bleeding impact of my bloodline. I spent my first day on board the ship getting to know the several crew members who resided upon her. Sadly, I also experienced some anxiety when I found out that we would be spending the night in the bay for a little while longer, which increased my fear of being captured. Fortunately, we set sail the following morning, and I discovered that we would be stopping at several different locations along the way. Our first stop was a small island called Minnows, where we would pick up a number of supplies that had been chartered to be delivered to the Land of Waves. This made me happy because I would be able to see an old friend again and tell her about my ordeal. We spent 2 days at sea on the way to the first stop, which ultimately helped me to master the abilities I had gained from my memories. After we set sail for Wave, I discovered that it would take an additional 2 days for us to arrive. I had to confess that I had gotten very good at handling anything ahead during this time, including gazing and piloting a vessel. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't flawless, but I was getting better all the time. However, I had the impression that my captain, his daughter, and Old Salt knew more about me than they disclosed, so I chose to wait till they were honest. For now, though, it will have to do as I gaze out to sea and the wave shoreline. We came into ports, and for some strange reason, I felt compelled to be on guard here. I went straight down to try on my assassin garb and the weaponry I had become so familiar with during my time in that cave or vault. I told my captain that I would be in town seeing an old acquaintance who might want to accompany me, and I headed out onto the ship's deck without knowing what adventure lay ahead. The anchor's stop, Neo Providence, Neo Caribbean Outer Territories. In the anchor's stop, a local pub, a small group of sailors, also known as notorious pirates to the land of water, gathered around a table to drink and discuss their next course of action. At the head of the table was a stunning woman in her late 20s to early 30s who was drinking rum and thinking about whether the choice she was about to make was the best one for her crew and herself. "Thinking about going home again, Captain?" asked one of the young men seated at the table, turning to face her. She turned to face him and said, "I'm doing more than thinking about it, but I don't know if it would be worth it in the long run." In response, "I understand what you mean, but it's been a couple of years now and they do believe that we are, for want of a better word, Captain dead thankfully, but then if we go back that illusion of us being dead and gone will be gone instead and they'll just start hunting us down again," the young man said, nodding his head in agreement as they all had similar thoughts. "Maybe, and I'm just saying, maybe we should start hunting them instead, after all that's what he would not let us do in the first place when he sold us out to those bastards," said another crew member seated at the table. They were all too familiar with that day because they had witnessed so many of their friends being killed while attempting to flee. The woman known as the captain had just finished her shot of rum and was ready to address them when a young crew member rushed in and gave her a newspaper while grinning and saying, Captain Morgan, you have got to read this." Every member of her crew watched as Morgan's eyes widened as she placed the newspaper flat on the table for everyone to read after taking it from him and starting to read the headline. The land of snow was freed, and its rightful monarch called it the land of spring. The young man who had spoken before stated, "By Neptune's beard she's alive, and she had help killing that son of the bitch." Everyone was shocked to read this. After reading the article for himself, a different crew member remarked, "It says here he was killed by some young kid named Naruto Uzumaki of the Hidden Leaf village of Konoha in Fire Country." Wait, are you saying he's an Uzumaki? But I thought they had been all wiped out by the water government thanks to the purge. Do you think he's related to her? Asked another crew member at the table. This young man piqued Morgan's interest as well. "I don't know, gentlemen, but if we do meet him out there, I want to thank him personally," Morgan said. Every young man at the table had a great deal of respect for this young man in addition to feeling a little jealous of him. With a sigh of relief, Morgan asked her crew, "How long will it take to prepare the Frozen Queen for sailing?" After learning that her young niece was still alive and had assisted in overthrowing her evil uncle and releasing their country from this oppression. After considering what he knew about the ship's condition and what was still needed, the young man who had spoken first, Ken, said to his captain, "She still needs some minor hull repairs to be totally seaworthy and ready for combat just in case, so I would say about 2 to 3 days and then we can sail, Captain." Morgan grinned and then added, "Good, that give us enough time to get the ship truly ready for this and check everything. I want to be absolutely sure that we make it back home in one piece, but I also agree that we need to be able to fight as well. Now get started." Everyone nodded and went to work right once. Morgan said, "I'll see you again soon, my little niece, and if these bloody water bastards get in my way, I'll show them just how powerful the Snow Lord of the Sea really is." With a smile on her face. Hidden Leaf Village of Konoha, Land of Fire, has a cherry blossom restaurant. The fourth Hokage's daughter, Akima, was still struggling to reconcile the information she had learned a few days prior about the person her aunt had warned her to avoid, who had actually been her half-brother all along. Based on the distorted perception she had been exposed to throughout her brief life, she may have just made him her lifelong enemy. She also had to accept that her grandfather, the fabled Toad Sage, had contributed to his suffering. As a result, she was eager to find out as much as she could about him. To this end, she was startled to see her brother's old pink-haired teammate enter the restaurant where she had been dining on this particular day. "How are you doing, Akima?" Sakura inquired as she approached her table, sat down directly next to her, and the two of them almost immediately locked eyes. It was difficult for Akima to answer her, but she finally worked up the guts and determination to say, "How do I feel? That is a good question you ask me, Sakura. Because I honestly do not know the answer to that one, not after what I have done." "So what did you do?" she inquired of her old friend, both out of interest and concern. "I was the one who led the charge and eventual banishment of your teammate Naruto after he woke up from his coma, but I did not know what I have done," Akima remarked, laughing uncontrollably. This revelation now really caught Sakura off guard. "But I thought he ran away?" she asked. With a hint of sadness in her voice, she stated, "No, Sakura, he fled due to the banishment order." "Why would you do that to him, Akima? I mean, I know he's a bit obnoxious at times," Sakura responded. "Because I thought I was avenging my father, only to discover I had banished my own half-brother in the process and didn't even know what he had gone through until it was all over," she stated. "It can't be true. Sensei would never knowingly let someone die," Sakura said, her eyes widening as she realized what she had witnessed that day when her former friend had attacked their sensei. Now, a little curious, Akima asked her old acquaintance, "Are you talking about Kakashi Hatake?" "Yeah, that's him all right. Why do you ask, Sakura? He is the only survivor from my father's team." "Are you sure that Naruto is your half-brother? Because this all just seems a little too coincidental if you ask me," Sakura asked, still processing what she had learned and feeling the need for additional details. "He is my half-brother, Sakura, and I heard it right from my grandfather when Lady Tsunade confronted him about the memory seal on my brother's back and what other implications this would have on all of us. And that's not all, Sakura. Both my brother and grandfather admitted that his mother had been murdered by someone either inside the village or from outside its very walls, with someone conspiring against the village, and that no one has done anything about it." Sakura's eyes widened as she realized what she had heard her former teammate say. Akima accused Kakashi-sensei of allowing it to happen in the first place, and from the look on Kakashi's face, it wasn't a lie at all the day he confronted our sensei and left. "We need to talk to him and find out what the hell is really going on. I'm going to get my brother back somehow. I just hope that he will forgive me for what I have done." Long Day Dock, Land of Wave, next to the Great Naruto Bridge. Walking off the Blue Sea's deck and onto the dock itself, Naruto felt good and completely free. He knew that the ship would be in port for at least 2 or 3 days while the cargo was unloaded and a new cargo was loaded for its next destination, which would be the land of spring. However, for the time being, he would enjoy his guaranteed leave and take advantage of the chance to test out the armor, weapons, and equipment he had made in the sanctuary cave. He walked through the village admiring its beauty as it had clearly recovered from its time with Gato trying to bleed this land dry for his own purposes, and was very happy that the old Templar bastard had been killed by Zabuza. But he eventually found the old church had a rather high bell tower with a perch at the top and decided to go climbing as he could get a rather good view of the village and surrounding area of the island, much like his ancestors had done during their time. He was thrilled with his progress thus far and used this time to test out his hidden blade and hook blade to see how well they worked again after taking a chance on a nearby hay.be. In order to travel light and avoid drawing too much attention at the time, he sealed away all of his other weapons and equipment after a few minutes of testing. After a short while, he finally came up on the old bridge builder's house and grinned, but before he could even approach it, he felt a sharp object stab him in the back. Naruto was able to smile despite being at the point of a weapon as he remarked, "It's been a long time, Inari." The young boy in question recognizes this young man's voice right away. "Naruto? Been some time, Inari. How have you been?" Naruto asked, turning around and lowering his hood to give the tiny child a close-up look at his face. An old man carrying a bottle of alcohol approached them, and Naruto couldn't help but remark, "You do know it's kind of early to start drinking?" The young boy in question dropped his weapon and ran up to the young assassin, giving him a big hug and expressing his happiness at seeing the young man in front of him again. In response, the older man simply shook his head and muttered something about disrespect before saying, "I'm an old man, kid. I can do what I want up to a point. Besides, this is the really good stuff." As he continued, the elderly bridge builder saw that they were both rolling their eyes at him. "Didn't expect to see you here anytime soon with what I heard happened to you all some time ago," he asked. "Trust me, a lot has happened to me recently that you all need to know about, but before I tell you all what happened to me I need to know where she is," Naruto said, putting his hood back on before turning to face the elderly drunk. As soon as Tazuna realized that their young hero had suffered a setback, he went to his grandson and said, "Go tell your mother to have a good-sized lunch ready for not only us but 2 guests as well." His grandfather turned back to the hero and said, "She's not far from here. She set up her own home not too far from the graves and that field of herbs that she gets a good deal of her medicine from." Inari shook his head and hurried off to inform his mother of what was happening. After giving the elder guy a nod, Naruto went in search of her and said, "Thanks, old man. I'll see you soon." As his curiosity overcame him, the elderly bridge builder could only wonder what would be revealed to them and ask, "What the hell happened to you, kid?" "Too much, old man, too much. I'll tell you everything over the meal," Naruto stated, pausing in his tracks and turning around to face the elderly man. Fire Country's Hokage's Tower is located in Konoha's Hidden Leaf Village. With some apprehension, Jiraiya had just walked into the Hokage's office. Accompanying him was none other than Kakashi Hitaki, the former sensei of Team 7, who had managed to return to active service after suffering unexpected injuries at the hands of his former pupil. Since the banishment order had been revoked and a retrieval order had been issued by the Fire Daimyo himself, the two of them sat in the lobby, obviously unsure of what would happen now that they needed the Hokage's help in trying to find young Naruto. By this point, Jiraiya was anxious and worried about the upcoming meeting. He turned to look at Hitaki to see how he was feeling and saw that he was reading one of the old pervert's books. Despite his best efforts to hide it, he could still see a hint of worry on the younger man's face. "What do you think is going to happen now?" Kakashi asked, letting out a sigh before putting his book in its pouch and turning to face the Toad Sage. Even though he had complied with the orders to erase Naruto's memories of both that incident and his mother, Jiraiya had been secretly wondering that his plans to find out who had killed Kushina in the first place had been his own. However, he was now aware of how messed up everything had been because his sensei had not trusted him in the first place. What was going to happen was the only question Jiraiya needed to ask himself now. The Land of Rice, Secret Soundbase 21. While Orochimaru was sitting on his throne, watching his most recent project and the progress of his new student Sasuke Uchiha, who was practicing his latest moves with a determined demeanor, he was taken aback when one of his special informants entered the room to give a report. The young ninja was about to give his report when Orochimaru gestured for Sasuke to stop what he was doing and come over. "Lord Orochimaru, as you instructed, I have been keeping my spies occupied in the Hidden Leaf ever since the retrieval mission failed for them. But I have paid close attention to the Nine Tails host as you asked, and it is not a nice one, my lord." Almost instantly, Sasuke and the Snake Sage were drawn to this. What has happened? Upon being returned to the village, my lord, he was left in some kind of coma-like state for well over a month now, my lord. However, 5 days ago, my lord, he finally woke up. To be sure, Orochimaru was astonished. He gestured for his ninja to go on, saying, however, upon waking he was immediately brought to a council meeting where he was forcibly banished from the village due to his failure to bring in Master Uchiha here. Sasuke was honestly surprised by his old village's actions. In all honesty, Orochimaru was also surprised by what he had recently found out and listened even more intently than before as his ninja continued to speak. However, it was during this time that everyone learned there was some kind of memory seal on the young man's back, sealing up his memories and also covering up the fact that his mother had been murdered when he was 6 years old. Additionally, he confronted your old sensei Master Uchiha, who was aware of this problem, broke the man's arm and nose in the process, and accused him of allowing her to die. He then vanished from the hamlet and hasn't been seen since. My lord, that was 5 days ago. Orochimaru looked the man in the eyes and said solemnly, "Tell your informants that I want all the information regarding these events as soon as they can safely bring it to my attention." This was a major shock to them because it raised more questions. Does that make sense? Yes, as you say, my lord. After bowing his head, the man departed the room to complete his task as quickly as possible. The Snake Sage merely looked him in the eyes and said, "It would appear that your former teammate has a dark past very similar to yours, my apprentice, and yet I wonder why he had a memory seal upon him and you did not," as Sasuke turned to his new teacher, still in disbelief over what he had just learned. Though Sasuke was still considering the blonde as a friend, he was wondering what else was being concealed from them all and why the loser seemed to have such a propensity to go into problems. He was also becoming inquisitive about what was actually happening. Fire Country's Hokage's Tower and Konoha's Hidden Leaf Village. The operation, or mission, Jiraiya had been ordered to oversee was to retrieve Naruto Uzumaki, who had been banished not by the council but also by his granddaughter Akima, who had started it all. Jiraiya had to admit that he was very anxious at the moment, waiting to see his old teammate who was now the village's Hokage and in overall command of the operation. The Fire Lord had made it apparent that the young man's recovery was of the utmost importance to him, the nation, and any possible allies. Finding the conspiracy that killed the young man's mother was another priority that the Fire Lord had given, and it also led to the decision to put the seal on him in the first place because the Fire Daimyo had not approved of it. All he knew for certain was that, aside from smashing him into a wall, Tsunade had gone to great lengths to shield Naruto from the exile in the first place. He was even more startled to learn of his mother's passing. In this instance, he knew to tread carefully with his old partner. As the two men continued to reflect on their current circumstances, one of the numerous secretaries opened the door and gestured for the two men to enter the office. To their astonishment, they discovered that behind her desk was not only the Hokage but also one of the village elders who had previously been Jiraiya's teacher's rival. He was also known as Danzo, the leader of the Foundation, or more popularly, the Root Division of Anbu Special Forces. Jiraiya and Kakashi had to concede that facing the senior ninja, who was now one of the Hokage's 3 primary advisors, was, to put it mildly, scary. Danzo then turned his head to assess them with his one good eye for the upcoming dispute. As the Hokage started to talk to them and start this meeting, Danzo returned his focus to her, saying, "All right, now that you're all here, we can start the meeting. As you are all aware, the Fire Lord has now revoked Naruto's banishment order and issued an instant recall for him. Having said that, this operation is crucial for the security of the Land of Fire as well as the villages." The others nodded their heads as she went on. "Now, Jiraiya, you are the main field commander because, as you are aware, I am in overall command of this operation and can provide you with the much needed support when asked for or if it is absolutely necessary. Who would you pick as your team captain first?" Jiraiya said to Kakashi, "I've chosen Kakashi here to be the primary squad leader. His knowledge and experience with our target will be invaluable." He went on, saying, "I would also like to assign when possible your new apprentice to this team as well since she also has a connection with Naruto." Jiraiya could just see the doubtful expressions on the faces of the previous occupants of the room. "I can understand that, but who else would you choose for this team?" Tsunade said, nodding her head in agreement. There are many other candidates that I must consider at this time. Anyone who would be sent on this detail must be aware of just who they are going after. And from the way you are talking, you have an intimate knowledge of the target, do you? Danzo, who had been largely silent during the discussion, said. The remark, of course I understand him, I made him my apprentice after all, startled both Jiraiya and Kakashi. Then, speaking in a lethal tone, Danzo stood up straight from his chair and gave them a direct gaze. And there is where you are mistaken, Toad Sage. Then Tsunade unlocked a desk drawer and took out a pretty huge file with Naruto Uzumaki's name on it. The file was as thick as at least 2 encyclopedias, the enormous ones. This is Naruto's real personnel file, and it contains all of his medical records and his real education information from his time in the academy, as well as working and being taught by Yu Kakashi. It also contains information about the alterations that the old man made to Seal, as well as his continued training of the boy up until the date of his death, Tsunade said, placing her hand on the file and speaking in plain language that they could understand perfectly. Additionally, it enumerates the scant knowledge on the special powers of the Uzumaki lineage nicknamed Animus. The disclosures were like a ton of bricks to the two of them. What does it say about his potential level exactly? That he is clearly above the rank of Chunin, maybe even low-level Jonin for all we know. One thing is for certain now. And it is? The older man was asked by Kakashi. Danzo went to the imitator and addressed him disrespectfully, as though he were a bug incapable of keeping his word, let alone his own beliefs. The youngster is now unknown, which makes him extremely dangerous, especially for you two. His statement, "We still know him better than anyone, and he will not be a danger to us," deeply offended them both. Is that so? And do tell me, do you really know him at all, or do you know the boy the Seal created? Danzo asked, grinning at them and laughing menacingly. Because they are two quite distinct animals, as far as I can tell. Neither of them had anything to say when Danzo continued. First of all, the boy knows that you Jiraiya are responsible for putting the seal on him in the first place, despite whatever plan you intend to put into action, or for that matter if you were going to use him in some way, which if I was him I would be thinking about it very seriously. Although Kakashi was aware that the old war hawk was correct and made a very valid point on the attitude of their current target, Kakashi also knew that the bad news would only continue to arrive on this particular day. The Hokage then addressed them again, confirming his mental forecast. It is because of these reasons that I and Danzo have decided to assign your remaining team member positions. One of them has been drafted into service under the Emergency Personnel Protocol Act, which is part of the village's charter to deal with situations of war or a political situation such as this. The old pervert allowed his curiosity get the better of him and inquired, and just who are you planning to recruit into the ninja services? The EPPA had only been utilized a couple of times, and that had been during the last conflicts that the Leaf had been to fight in. He was immediately alarmed by the expression on her face as she said, "Your grandchild." She had just uttered something that left Kakashi and Jiraiya completely stunned. Jiraiya was still in disbelief over what he had just heard his old teammate say to him. "Please tell me that's a joke, princess?" "I'm not joking with you, pervert. She is responsible for setting all of this in motion in the first," she said, staring him in the eyes. "But she is not a trained shinobi, Tsunade. And I know that you are lying. I am well aware that you have trained her to defend herself and that she is easily a Chunin-level shinobi," she continued, her expression hardening like steel as she looked directly into his eyes. "Now, the only thing she lacks is the experience that many of our younger warriors have." Jiraiya truly wanted to go down on his knees and beg his old comrade to change his mind, but he had a strong suspicion that it would not work out at all, so he chose to make his case to her again, saying, "Please do not do this. Jiraiya, it's already finished. She will be notified of my decision regarding this tomorrow. Tomorrow, the other members of your team will also be presenting themselves." After that, she picked up 2 huge folders, handed them to him, and said again, "These are copies of Naruto's actual personnel file, but some items have been blacked out because they are still highly classified. Then leave my sight. You two are fired." After taking copies of their teenage target's actual personnel files, 2 of them exited the room feeling dejected and unsure of what would happen next. Danzo felt a great deal of sympathy for his young pupil who would be assigned to this team as he saw the 2 guys leave the room, knowing that this was all over. The Land of Waves Forest. The first reason Naruto chose to spend his time looking for Haku was to get some fresh air. After their brief talk, the elderly alcoholic realized how much had been done to him in his brief existence, so he just learned to decompress. The second reason was because he knew she was probably already aware of his presence here. As he was walking through the woods, he recalled an old song that his mother, who was still alive, would sometimes sing to him when he was younger. She felt that the song's opening lyrics summed up most of his life and, in a sense, Haku's as well. Then he shook his head and laughed a little as he remembered the words and started singing to himself, hoping that it would bring him some sort of comfort. Once upon a time I swear I had a heart, long before the world I know tore it all apart. Years before they took away the part of me that cared, there was a time when I shared that part of myself. I've been 1,000 places and shook 1,000,000 hands, I don't know where I'm going but I know just where I've been, he sang, knowing that the next few verses would help him a little bit more and clear his head despite the pain. Those final words, which he spoke out loud, had only served to remind him even more of what he had lost so long ago. A castaway, a vagrant. I've flown 1,000,000 miles and rode countless others every day. Battle born. The irony of it all was that he had started singing in the hopes of feeling better, but he had to admit that he felt a little worse in the long run. Nevertheless, at least some things were getting back to normal for him, or as normal as they were going to get for the time being. After the last verse, he stopped in his tracks and couldn't help but think about how true many of those words were to him. Afterward, he tried his hardest to control his emotions and wiped away his tears. He was shocked that he had been crying at all and felt somewhat relieved that so much had been taken away from him but had not yet completely returned. Immediately behind him, he heard footsteps, and a young woman's voice said, "You sing that song with such sadness and emotion in your voice, Naruto. You also look so different from what I remember of you." With a little chuckle, he turned to her and said, "It's good to see you too, Haku." "It's good to see you, Naruto, but what has happened to you?" she said, approaching him while still holding a little basket full of healing herbs, acknowledging that this updated style fit him perfectly. With a sigh, he massaged the back of his head before addressing her directly and saying, "To tell you the truth, I don't know where to even begin myself." After recognizing the direction he had come from and comprehending his statement, she inquired, "You went to see the old drunk first? It's been a while and I didn't know where to look for you. I also asked him to make us all a lunch so I could tell my tale of woe," he said, smiling broadly and looking her in the eyes as he extended his hand and spoke in a kind and warm voice that he believed would never return after what had happened to him. "A lunch sounds pretty good and I definitely want to hear about what the hell happened to you. So, what's with the new look?" They asked each other casually as they walked side by side back towards the house. "I made most of this stuff, I just scavenged the other things here and there in a cave of all places. It's actually kind of a standard-like design that my ancestors used to use a lot for when they had to their missions." "You must have some serious badass in your family line," Haku said, wondering who his forefathers were and why they had to dress in such risky attire. "You have no idea, Haku. Hell, I didn't even know who they were until a couple of days ago myself, to tell you the truth," he answered, simply grinning at her. She was taken aback when he said, "What do you mean?" "When I was 6 years old, Haku, I watched my mother being murdered by 7 men who had somehow infiltrated our village without detection. They had their own bodyguards to protect them and to intimidate her to doing what they wanted." "What was she doing?" "She said if they so much as came within a foot of me she would tear their balls out through their ass," he continued, smiling slightly. She would definitely get along with his mother, Haku thought, astonished by that statement. "I'm starting to like her already, and I take it that he did not take her warning seriously?" No. Unfortunately, they failed to account for the fact that my mother had been teaching me how to be a ninja and an assassin, so they sent their bodyguards in to do their dirty job for them." "So she lost her life defending you against them?" "Yes and no. They attacked us, and I simply let my training take over, recalling what she had told me about samurai's propensity for using this tactic in similar circumstances." "What is that?" "I don't mind. In other words, don't think because I killed 8 of them that day, and it wasn't enough to save her in the end, so don't believe you're going to perish in the heat of battle." Because it was comparable to her own training, Haku comprehended what he was saying. What occurred next? He told her, recalling every detail of that night as best he could, but secretly wishing he could forget it all and cursing his photographic memory. "As soon as they gave her the fatal wounds that would end her life and take her from me, they began to advance upon, only to be stopped by a man who was wearing a strange mask with only one eye visible. He then started talking again. He's so angry with them for what they have done and threatened to kill them if they did not leave the very instant. They then disappeared, leaving me with her until she passed away thanks to her injuries." "I'm sorry to hear that," When she understood that there was more to the story and that she already knew it, he turned to face her with a genuine expression of regret. But that's not the end, Haku. The Anbu soon arrived, led by my former sensei, who then rendered me unconscious and dragged me away from her. They placed a memory seal on me to prevent me from talking about what had happened that evening, but a month or so ago the seal finally cracked, bringing back all the details of what had happened to me. The sound of screams could be heard in the distance before Haku could ask any more questions, so Naruto instantly activated a set of sails on his clothes, unlocked the rest of his weapons and equipment, and used his free running abilities to run up a nearby tree while recalling the actions of his two ancestors and the techniques he had developed during his own time spent training in the cave. Haku was taken aback by how swiftly he had gone and vanished into the forest. She immediately followed him in the hopes of helping him in any way that could be necessary. Bridge Builder's house is located in the Land of Waves, on the edge of Wave Forest. As he lay on the ground, bleeding from a cut on his head, Tazuna, the former bridge builder of the Land of Wave, who had played a key role in leading the effort to free his nation from Gado's tyranny, watched the 6 men who had come to his house to take him and his family for an unknown reason, but he could tell by the expression in their eyes that it would not be pleasant for any of them. The old bridge builder knew that Naruto and the girl were still out there, had likely heard their cries by now, and would likely be coming to their aid. He simply prayed that nothing would happen to them. 4 of the men were keeping watch over them beneath a big tree, while the other 2 patrolled a nearby area searching for any kind of intruders. Tazuna could tell right away that these were not your typical mercenaries who dared to call themselves samurais and wielded their swords like clubs, because they were all wearing heavy body armor that reminded him of what higher range ninja would wear, save for the fact that they were dark blood red in color with a strange black cross on their backs and a red interior. These men were schooled in the art of death, and to make matters worse, one of the 4 men watching him appeared to be looking for someone or something. At that moment, Tazuna witnessed a figure in black literally drag one of the 2 guards who were patrolling the outer area into a bush. A minute later, the second guard was also restrained in a similar manner, and he realized that they would no longer pose a threat to his family because he suspected they were no longer alive, and secretly prayed to God for sending him that crazy child again. When the 4 guards realized that their comrades were dead, they were completely unprepared for the next attack by the black figure. Suddenly, a strange spear-like object embedded itself in his chest, shocking everyone in the area. The strange object had a rope attached to it, and when they looked up to see who might be attacking, they saw a figure in black with a hood covering his face, then fall to the ground, leaving their comrade hanging from the tree as his life came to an end. The final survivor then drew his twin crossbows and started shooting at the hooded figure, watching as the Dark Angel of Death used his comrade's corpse as a shield to block all of the shots until the crossbows were empty. The hooded figure then rushed forward with his arms extended in what seemed to be strange blades attaching to his wrists, embedding them in their throats. When he was unable to shoot anymore, he noticed that the odd man had dropped the body that had been shielding him just a moment before and then stabbed him with a little throwing dagger, which instantaneously killed him by embedding itself between his eyes. As soon as he spoke, "You know, you old drunk, you have a way of attracting trouble, you know that, right?" Naruto ignited one of his wrist blades, moved behind Tazuna, and removed his shackles. Tazuna, unable to take a break, shrugged his eyes and started to assist in untying his family when he saw Haku running into the field where they were all wearing. He then noticed the shocked expression on her face as she gazed at the corpses scattered around. As Naruto approached the person and chopped it down to get his weapon from the corpse, she turned to him swiftly and pointed at the dead while attempting to form words. Seeing the expression on her face, he said to her, "You know who they are, don't you?" "I do. You know who they are. They are known as the Red Mercenary Organization and are generally tasked to hunt down shinobi of any kind and are also known to work for the highest bidder," she said, nodding her head as she examined the bodies and realized that her fear of running into things people again had come true. She also felt a little better knowing that Naruto could easily dispatch them. When Naruto saw the flash of metal around one of the nicks on the bodies, he nodded his head and reached down to retrieve the object from its deceased owner. He heard the elderly drunken man then remark, "So these guys hunt ninjas, that's not good for any of us." Naruto knew they were in serious trouble right away. 6 soldiers with at least a high to mid-chunin level make up this typical retrieval team. They are always accompanied by a sensitive operator to make hunting their targets easier. The difficulty is that there will be a backup squad nearby that is similar to this one in case something goes wrong. Naruto turned to face them, knowing that his battle for the day was over, and stated, "Haku, take them to the gravesite and I will meet you there after I deal with the other team." "Are you out of your mind? These are trained killers. Trust me," he said, turning back to face her, "I have no intention of dying this day." Shipyard Harbor Town of Wave, Land of Waves, RSS Warlock. The RSS Warlock's deck was bustling with activity as the crew hurried about doing their jobs while the ship was securely anchored. A group of men were waiting impatiently for word on the condition of their first retrieval team at a small communication station on the deck. As he heard the radio discussion, a somewhat regal-looking man with a distinctive-looking beard and expensive glasses stepped forward, saying, "Still no sign of retrieval team 1. We are almost at target destination. Be advised the targets are still priority." In answer, someone said on the radio, "Understood, Red Control." The guy with the royal appearance turned to face the ship's current commander and the man in charge of the Red agents who were attempting to capture the elderly bridge builder and his family. "I get from your tone that something has happened. We have lost contact with Retrieval Team 1 and they are overdue, that is all." "Trust me, Commander, it's never that simple." At that moment, they heard radio activity. "We've reached our goal. They're all dead, sir, so it's not good." As the communications went on, the commander's expression was one of mild surprise. "Sir, I have never seen injuries like this before. Keep an eye out for any hostiles. Hold on, where are the 2 centuries in hell?" The radio was suddenly filled with the sounds of fighting and yelling. "Kenny is down, I repeat, Kenny is down. This hooded freak is who the devil. Engaged the enemy right this AAHHHHHH. Holy shit, he just killed the sensitive Red Control. Subdue the hostile target together and continue to give us a description and an understanding of his abilities," was the first command the commander gave to the 2 surviving operators. "Acknowledged, Red Control. Twin formation, let's kill this son of a bitch." The sounds of footsteps on the grass were followed by the radio's claim of metal on metal as one of them repeated, "Target is wearing a long black trench coat with what appears to be a 9-tails fox and an eagle upon his back and is armed to the teeth with multiple weapons upon his person." Their own agent had just been killed, and the next sounds to be heard over the radio were a spine-tingling scream. They were talking frantically about their lone man, asking, "How the heck did he counter the attack? Why don't you pass away?" At that moment, a youthful voice said, "May you find absolution for your dark deeds in the next life. Requiescat in pace." Followed by the sounds of movement and gurgling and coughing over the radio. "I'll be coming to you, Templar bastards, the rest of you." After saying those words, the team's lines all died within a minute, leaving the Red Commander looking shocked as the man turned to face him and asked, "Did you send your weakest squads out there to accomplish the task I paid you all for?" Those 2 teams were highly experienced Gato. The second team was low to mid-Jonin level opponents equivalent to ninjas. "What is your current plan to deal with this threat, Commander?" said the handsome guy now known as Gato. "Well, for one, it would be suicide to send any more of my men into that forest area where this individual clearly is the tactical advantage. I would recommend placing at least 2 teams on the top of the warehouse that you are currently using to keep the captured villagers in until you for the money ship to sell them off to the Neo East India Company that is." Gato said, "I like your plan, Commander, but I also recommend that it might be a good idea to have the high-level prisoners taken as well." He nodded his head before continuing. Knowing that he would require all the assistance he could get, the commander nodded his head and got to work. Then Gato said, "I want you to put a bounty on this man," turning to face the radio operator. "Sir, we're still unsure who it is. Leave that to me, just get everything ready." Land of Waves, Cliff Graveyard. "Just a little harder to beat than the first squad," said Tazuna and Haku as they waited eagerly for Naruto to return to them, hoping he was okay. They were relieved to see him emerge from the woods. When they heard additional noises and saw more people from the town coming from the woods, some of whom appeared to have witnessed combat, Haku, Tazuna, and his family couldn't help but roll their eyes at him. The group leader then addressed the elderly bridge builder, saying, "They came at us so fast, they killed a good number of people and are imprisoning the rest in the central warehouse." Haku hurried over to them right once and started tending to their wounds. This startled Tazuna, who then said, "How did they get here?" After the Blue Sea finished docking, 2 more ships then appeared and attacked the village with those strange mercenaries, but the man who has started all of this goes by the name of Gato. They were all taken aback by the statement, "But he's dead." After that, Haku said, I think I know who it is. Then she continued, this might be his only surviving son, Gato III. And everyone looked to her. In contrast, he makes his father appear like an angel. Realizing that he needed to learn more about this adversary, Naruto asked, Haku, what can you tell me about them? Even though she could see where he was headed, she chose to question the survivor. You said 2 ships came in? Yes. One of them was obviously a high-end transport ship while the other was obviously built for combat and had blood-red sails, he said after giving her a nod. Well, that's good at least. A standard ship will only carry 6 teams on board and it's 6 men to a team and 1 sensitive to each team. Well, that's great that there are only 24 red operatives left, but how do you know so much about them, Haku? The Land of Water set them after me and Zabuza a lot. If it wasn't for his hidden mist jutsu we would be dead. After being shocked to learn of this, Naruto devised a scheme. It interferes with the sensitives, doesn't it? Yes, it is how we always escaped and even took out a few of them. How long until nightfall? He inquired, turning to Tazuna hurriedly. Why around 5 or 6 hours? Looking directly into her eyes, Naruto stated, I need you to teach me the hidden mist jutsu right now. You can't possibly learn it in that amount of time. Haku, I learned how to do the shadow clone jutsu in about 2 hours and I get the memories back from my clothes when I used to take me. I can literally learn things a lot faster thanks to this ability now. Please teach me how to do this. GSI Traveler, Land of Waves, Wave Harbor. The Warlock's radio operator approached Gato on the traveler's deck and gave him a piece of paper, which he read. Fox Kenway is his name. Black Fox is an alias or nickname. Affiliation. Pirate in need crime. 12 red agents and innocent civilians were murdered. $1,000, dead or alive, is the bounty. After reading something that shocked him, the radio operator turned to his boss and was going to inquire. I think this moniker fits him like a glove and these people who dare to defy us must be hunted down. Gato saw a lot of mist wall into the small village as the sun set and the operator went back to his post. He was thinking about what would soon be his new area. The moment he realized that the battle was about to start, he said, here they come. Land of Waves, Wave Forest's Edge. Haku, Naruto, and the other free residents of the community of Wave stared down on their community, which was currently under the control of the Lethal Red Mercenaries organization. When Naruto peered through his spyglass at the warehouse, he saw 12 men standing there with an unhindered view of the entire town and the best approach routes. The Reds had stolen their home away from them and many of their friends. Looks like they are waiting for us when we go down there. Is there another way in, you old drunk? He asked the elderly drunk after realizing immediately that the 2 remaining teams were in the area below, simply waiting for the chance to ambush them or anyone else who might try to infiltrate the village or rescue the hostages. He rolled his eyes and said, would you please stop calling me that, and the entrance that we seek is right over there in that small blue building. He was Tazuna, the old drunk, or super bridge builder as he preferred to be called. After giving a nod, Naruto stood up and started practicing the hidden mist jutsu with Haku. The young ice user was still in awe at Naruto's rapid acquisition of this skill. The executioner blade, or, more accurately, what was left of it, as she had left the most of it at Mark Zabuza's grave sati, was on her back. For the sword to regain its special powers, only a small amount of blood on it was necessary. Trust me on this one, okay? It will be back to normal in no time. All have to do is beat the living hell out of someone and then cut them up pretty good, Naruto said, glancing at the remnants of the blade once again. I still find it hard to believe that blood can be used to reform the blade at all. As they started to travel to the village under the cover of the hidden mist, she murmured to him, so was I the first time I saw him do it. Land of Fire, Hidden Leaf Village, the green old tree bar and grill. All of Jiraiya's well-thought-out plans for young Naruto were falling apart in front of him, and it was all because of his sensei's meddling and lack of faith in him. Jiraiya could not help but feel a little disheartened after all that had happened thus far. He could not shake the feeling that he had let the boy down a lot and had not foreseen some things that had impacted all he had done as he looked through Naruto's actual personnel file. Actually, the facts he was now reading from the file only made him feel more worried since he understood the youngster might be even more powerful than he had previously believed, and the study's fear that he would be very unstable for a while was only strengthened. He had to set down his drink and pinch the bridge of his nose after reading so much, drawing his companion's attention with a deep sigh. Kakashi addressed the older man, saying, "I did not think that this was going to get to you that badly, Lord Jiraiya." Jiraiya said, "Believe me, Kakashi, if you knew what he knew about the boy's family tree, you would be taking what's in this report very seriously as well." Jiraiya addressed the younger man directly. "You can't honestly believe this stuff about a bloodline that can allow you to literally relive your ancestors' memories and even gain their skills. It's just not possible." To be honest, Jiraiya found it hard to accept that his own former pupil could be so naive. This stuff, as you like to put it, was all heavily classified. You don't heavily classify something unless it has a shred of truth to it. And considering who his grandmother was, I would really hope that he does not get any of her memories, because if he does, we will all be screwed. This statement startled Kakashi, who questioned, "Okay, why are you so scared of a dead woman? You have got to be kidding me. You don't honestly know anything Washi Uzumaki, the woman they called the Red Maelstrom, or another name you might know her by, which was the Red Reaper." When Kakashi recognized the old pervert, his one good eye opened in surprise. "You're telling me that she was his grandmother?" he asked. In response to the younger man's question, Jiraiya simply nodded his head and said, "Remember, I was in my last year of the academy when I saw her for the first time up close and personal. She was just a few years younger than my sensei at the time, and then because of his actions she then proceeded to beat the crap out of him for peeking on her in the hot springs. Was she really as terrifying as they say?" After saying, "You have no idea how dangerous that woman was. If I had known everything that I know now, I would never have put that seal on him in the first place," Jiraiya chuckled slightly. "So what we do know?" inquired Kakashi. "We do what we can, but right now first we need to find him, and I have my contacts and spies looking all over the elemental nations, since they pose as workers and tourists for the most part. All we need to be prepared when we do find him," Jiraiya said after a few moments of deep thought. The Land of Waves, main warehouse. Many of the village's residents were being held captive in temporary cells in the Land of Waves main warehouse, which was now serving as a makeshift jail. This was done so that they might be sold to anyone with the money. 4 of the best fighters from the Red Mercenary warship, known only as the Warlock, stood guard over this human cargo of suffering because they were the only ones available at the time. The other Red operatives were waiting just outside to kill anyone attempting to save this valuable cargo. The only thing the 4 sailors had not anticipated was the strange fog that had entered the building, which made it difficult to see anything or to detect the enemy if they had entered the building, which was driving them up a wall. They also had to deal with the inmates, who were making things more difficult because several of the young men sharing one of the many cells refused to be quiet or cooperate with them, launching insult after insult at their tormentors, which infuriated them both and, as it turned out, made them sloppy. Naruto wasted no time in hunting down his new target, using the young man in the cells as a distraction to eliminate each of them individually. In the first 30 seconds, he had swiftly and silently killed 2 of the enemy sailors, and now he was right behind the third, silently killing him by driving his hidden blade into his back. When the last sailor realized what was happening, he turned to face Naruto, who swiftly brought his wrist blade home and thrust it into the man's throat. With a single, fast motion, he opened the rest of the man's throat, and with a swifter motion, he snapped the man's neck, ending his life even more quickly. The old drunk and Haku were busy guiding everyone to the hidden passageway when Naruto swiftly handed his keys to the next guard and started to open as many of the cells as he could. In the first cell, a young redhead woman with red eyes and a pair of glasses was not much older than him. Next to her was a white-haired young man with what appeared to be shark teeth, which reminded him of his few experiences with water ninjas from the Hidden Mist village, just like Zabuza was wearing when he first saw him without the wrappings that had covered most of his face at the time. One of the captives pointed out 2 distinct cells, each of which held 2 people. He moved swiftly into the cell and unlocked the red-headed woman's restraints, feeling her chakra lash out as it was no longer contained by them. He knew that these people could be very helpful because they still needed to capture the 2 enemy ships that were just sitting in the harbor. He kept doing these things until he reached the younger redhead and experienced something he had only felt when he was with his mother. It was as though he knew she was linked to him, and she also had the same expression on her face as he did. "Are you an Uzumaki?" she inquired, feeling a deep connection to him as she reached out and pulled off his hood to show his spiky blonde hair with crimson undertones. He gave her a nod as they both heard the older woman say, "You too are Uzumakis, but we thought the purge had killed all of you?" in a startled manner that was tinged with interest. She was taken aback by the question, but she quickly answered, I saw the Bloodline users and pirates who just wanted us to be free and rebellion members being executed. One of them was a young red-headed boy who I later learned was an Uzumaki. He just started singing this song with a look of defiance upon his face. The distant relatives turned to face her, looking shocked. The two relatives turned to her after exchanging glances and started singing the song they had heard and seen in their nightmares that night so long ago. The Red Cross Knight and his men stole the Fox Queen from her bed and bound her in her bones. When May realized that they had somehow witnessed the execution so many years prior, she was in complete disbelief. "How do you know about that song?" she asked. Both of them told her at the same time, "We saw the whole thing in our dreams, but we thought it was just a dream we had." "You two didn't have that dream. Those folks were put to death that day. How did you ever find out about the song or what transpired?" "It must have something to do with our bloodline, the Animus," the two cousins thought, just glancing at one another before turning to face her. "Okay. The way you two talk like that is a little creepy, and while I have quite a few questions to ask you two, at the moment what are we going to do about the red operatives who are just outside?" she asked, a little taken aback by the response, not knowing that the Uzumaki clan actually had a bloodline. Naruto and his cousin immediately turned to face Haku and the young man who had been sharing the cell with her. They watched as Haku approached him with a familiar expression and then delivered a swift punch to the face, which was startling in and of itself because his face literally changed into a pool of water that splattered on the ground before returning to his body and reshaping his head as though nothing had happened other than the expression of a rather irritated young man. Then, with a tone that was a little irritated, he said to her, "What the hell was that for Haku?" Still attempting to understand what the devil was happening, Naruto and his cousin said, "You know him." She pointed at him without responding at first, then stated ominously, "That was for leaving us all along. We could have used your help on that one mission." "Look, Ice Princess, don't blame me, okay? He told me to go back to May over there. Unfortunately, that pale-ass son of a bitch of a snake captured me and then experiment on me, okay?" "What the hell do you know about Orochimaru?" Naruto screamed in a voice that made everyone in the room shudder. He swiftly crossed the distance, grabbed him by the collar, and pushed him against the cell's bars. "Look man, all I know is that crazy son of a bitch experimented upon me and he was also going on and on about getting some kid from the Hidden Leaf. Karen, you want to get your crazy and dangerous cousin off me now?" He questioned her with an air of worry in his tone. After dropping him, Naruto turned to face her and apologized, saying, "We need to introduce ourselves. My name is Naruto, and yours is Karen." "That's right, and this is Suigetsu. What were the names of your mother and father?" she asked, nodding her head at him before pointing to her old cellmate. "I don't know my father's name is, but my mother's name was Kushina." Then Karen grinned broadly and continued, "That was my aunt's name." As the two relatives got to know one another, May concluded that they had to get out of this makeshift jail as soon as possible. "So your father was my mother's little brother. It is nice to have family once more. I'm sorry to break up this little family reunion, but we really need to get the hell out of here," she told them. After they apologized and turned back to face each other, Naruto made a few clones that started drawing seals everywhere before asking his cousin, "How far along are you in your memories from the Animus?" As he took out a scroll and opened a weapon she was most familiar with, she stated to him, "I just finished reliving the memories of Ezio when he was in Constantinople. I just started to relive the memories of Haytham Kenway." "A hidden blade. I take it you know how to use this, right?" he remarked as he gave her the firearm. "I know that killing someone won't be easy, but I've had to do it before." As she put the weapon on her right wrist and checked that the blade was working, she told him, "And I just knew I was going to have to again." When he said to everyone, "Listen, I've got a plan in motion. Right now, my clones are preparing a little surprise for the two teams of red mercenaries outside of these walls, both above and on the sides. I guarantee you they won't survive what I have planned, but their deaths will only be a distraction so that we can take out the real threats on those two ships and end this invasion once and for all." She and her former cellmate joined him. "Who's with me now to get rid of these bitch sons who yell, 'I', and those who oppose it who weep, 'Nay'?" To his initial amazement, almost everyone screamed, "I', both those who could fight and those who couldn't." He then laughed a little when she repeated, "And those who are opposed." There was just silence when he started to make his way to the hidden exit and muttered, "Now if only countries were this unified." As May and her second.in command, "Ow," walked beside him, some of the crowd laughed. "What exactly are you going to do those guys outside?" she asked. He paused and turned to face her with a smile that she had only seen a few times from her army comrades who had a reputation for pulling practical jokes. It was the type of smile that informed her that these guys had a brilliant, terrible idea that they would bring about someone's death. "Why spoil the surprise, my lady?" he asked, looking her in the eyes with the same smile. After leaving the warehouse where my clones were preparing the surprise of my little ambush, we went to the Traveler, which was Gado's personal ship and the first ship we had chosen to remove. May had informed him that on the few occasions she was being questioned by Gado III, she had managed to overhear them discussing some sort of plan for the elemental nations, which also greatly caught my attention. This had proved to be a great idea, as several more members of the Mist Rebellion were now being held in the ship's hold, demonstrating that they were all here for a reason. I watched as Ao then offered to stay behind. Many of these slavers had begged for compassion but received none, despite the fact that the crew of this ship had clearly not been adequately prepared for this type of surprise attack that we conducted against them. To put an end to this war once and for all, we went against the Warlock as soon as we had taken the Traveler and slightly expanded our ranks. Without them noticing, we had reached the top rigging and were only waiting for an opening to attack. We didn't have to wait long because the radio operator on deck started asking the two red mercenary teams for updates, and they replied that there was still no contact with the enemy. However, when it came to hearing from the guards inside the warehouse, there was a complete halt. I prepared a rope dart because I knew immediately who I would attack because there was only one red member left, and that was the man standing next to Gado. I then turned to face the blue sea, which had initially transported me back to the land of waves, and saw that the crew had started to kill the ship's enemies one by one in an assassin-like manner using what looked like wrist blades, which only made me want to ask them more questions. When the commander and his employer had grown impatient in a matter of minutes, I looked closely at Gado and saw how different he was from his father. For starters, Gado III was obviously much taller than his ancestor. I looked closely at him and saw that he wore glasses, but they were made of very sturdy materials and appeared to have seen a lot of wear. His suit was also handcrafted and appeared to have been made to withstand a lot of punishment. In his right hand, he held a keen, which I immediately realized was a hidden sword and looked to be quite expensive. On his left hand, he had an odd ring with 5 holes in the middle, which greatly piqued my interest. By the time I looked at his face, I could see small scars. He obviously knew how to protect himself if he didn't have bodyguards. As these thoughts raced through my mind, I heard the Red Commander give the order to breach. A few seconds later, a massive explosion destroyed the warehouse and many nearby buildings. The force of the explosion was felt on the ship, and even a few pieces of debris could be seen hitting the water nearby. It was obvious that even if any of them had survived, their lives would not have been long. Before any of them could even recover from the shock of the explosion I had caused, I struck hard, letting my rope dart fly right into the Red Commander's back and out of his chest. I then dropped off the back of the yard arm of the sail, sending the commander's body flying high into the air as I hit the deck of the ship, embedding the rope into the deck itself. I had a feeling that everyone in the reading was probably staring at me with a look of surprise at the amount of destruction I had caused, but to be honest, I'd rather go for overkill now than not at all. In a matter of seconds, I had killed 10 men, saving the final 2 shots of my 6 shooters for later. As I glanced out onto the Warlock's deck, I noticed that all of my companions were busy tearing their enemies apart. I swiftly drew my guns and started firing round after round into my opponents' heads, right in front of their eyes, ending their wicked lives. Suigetsu was given what was left of the Executioner Blade by Haku, and he demonstrated the weapon's unique abilities with ease because there was only a small portion of the blade left. However, after several dead men, the blade returned to its normal length and strength as he went about slaughtering these slavers, and I had no sympathy for them at all. Haku and Karen were proving to be a deadly combination, taking down enemies left and right. They had decided to take away other people's liberty after all. As much as I hated to admit it, Gado was really smart. He had hid behind a piece of equipment at the back of the ship to prevent me killing him. When he came out, he had already drawn his sword and was staring down at me with a gaze that shouted destruction and death. We looked at each other like predators, waiting for the perfect opportunity to attack and tear each other's throats out. I stared him down until he became very calculating, and the minute I activated my wrist and hook blade, he took it as a signal and we ran at each other, trading blows as if it were nothing. I had to admit that he was quite skilled, and I respected him, if only on a certain level. Using my iconic weapons, he tried his best to keep me at a distance so that I wouldn't get too close. He realized that fighting me up close would be suicide, like facing a member of the Hyuga clan, something I had first-hand experience with. Eventually, he was able to push me back far enough before pulling up his left hand, which had the odd ring on it. It only took me a second to realize it was some sort of gun, and when he pulled the trigger, a loud thunderclap erupted. I felt the impact of the bullet hitting me, and then I realized it had struck my hidden blade, as the sound of metal hitting metal at high speed filled the air. Upon examining my concealed blade, I discovered that it was possibly irreparably damaged and stuck in its combat position, unable to retract. Fortunately, I wasn't the only one experiencing equipment issues, as he was unable to fire the next shot in the ring. I wasted no time in running at him, and as he raised his left hand in a defensive stance, I proceeded to stab him in the hopes of hitting his heart. However, my blade became lodged in his arm, and as we rustled to find a better position, I heard the damaged portion of my blade break and fall back to the ground. When I looked up, I saw the look of shock and pain on his face. Thinking that the blade had pierced his heart, I didn't wait any longer and ran up to kick the blade and his left arm into his chest in an attempt to kill him. Needless to say, the look of shock on his face was, for want of a better word, priceless as he fell to his knees and then onto his back, breathing heavily and spitting up blood. As he lay on the ground waiting for the end, I approached him and looked down at him. He glanced up at me and said, "So I meet my end at the hands of an assassin, but I can tell that you're not a member of the Assassin's Order but maybe of the Brotherhood of Assassins." When I heard him say this, I was taken aback and a little intrigued. I asked him, "What do you mean by the Assassin's Order?" As my curiosity about what would happen grew, he stated to me, "So you don't know about them then, won't you be in for a shock?" I saw him smiling broadly after I responded, "Whoever said I was an assassin?" He began to laugh, but then he remarked to me, "Well, that is new, but I can tell you are of the old ways. You belong to the fraternity of assassins, and knowing that I at least gave it my all in the fight makes me feel a little proud and respectful of you." I gave him a nod and remarked, "I can respect you for fighting back, but not for what you did to this place. The Templars often assert that we are the ones who lead humanity and consider what we have to offer, which just serves to highlight how patty we humans truly are." I was shocked when I drew back my hood to let him see my face because, despite my hatred for my father, I still wanted to exact revenge on everyone but the guy with the 9 tails for his death. When he said to me, "So my father's sins are visited upon me in the same place where he died, that's ironic I guess," it was clear that he was surprised and realized what had happened. With a hint of rage in my voice, I told him, "Not as ironic as you might think, you chose to come here and do this. Perhaps you were right, but I felt the need to avenge him, just as I know you feel the need to avenge your own mother." While some of his statements struck a chord with me, they weren't entirely accurate. As I gazed down at him, I realized that, despite the fact that his time on this mortal coil was gradually running out, I still had some questions and answers that needed to be found. Avenging her is a part of me, but it's not my entire motivation. Why did you have those mist ninjas in your hands, and what exactly do you want them to perform for you? In an attempt to get a response, I asked the men who were struck. He laughed painfully and said to me, "The answers you seek are on the Traveler, and that is all I will say, assassin. I know I have no right to ask, but at least give me some kind of sending off like you assassins supposed to do." After giving him a nod, I said, "May you be fairly judged for your life's actions and find redemption in the next one, rest in peace." I closed his eyes, took the strange ring off his hand, and then looked around his body for any other important items. I found a few things and the pendant of the Templar Order around his neck, which I left alone. Unfortunately, I still had to remove the damaged section of my hidden blade from his arm and chest. With a single quick shock, it was expedited from his arm and chest cavity, leaving only blood. I stood up to my full height and sealed away all the broken parts of the blade and the main unit itself into one of my many scrolls, which I then pocketed in the hopes that I would be able to find someone or something to fix the blade. I took a step back and looked around, and I was struck by how much had changed. The crew of the Blue Sea and the ship itself were all staring at me. I turned back and saw Captain Cyrus and Old Salt standing side by side, and a little farther away was Sordiara, who had an astonished look on her face. The Blue Sea's sails were blowing in the wind because I had ascended it and passed through them on my route here. When I looked at them again and gave them a closer look, I saw that Cyrus and Old Salt carried themselves with understanding, purpose, and a little experience. Their movements reminded me of the way my ancestors and I moved, which had a sense of purpose. However, Sortiara and a few other crew members who had boarded the Warlock carried themselves in a manner reminiscent of an assassin, but they appeared less disciplined and organized to me. In her case, however, she appeared almost apprehensive and jittery, which is when I realized that the lives she had taken on board the Blue Sea had been her first kills. This surprised me greatly because I realized that someone with this kind of skill should have been accustomed to taking lives, but was obviously not, and it was having a significant impact on her. I also noticed that she seemed to have a certain amount of arrogance about her. Everyone, including Mei and her few surviving resistance soldiers, Haku, my cousin, and her sword, Crazy Buddy, noticed their existence in a matter of seconds. Needless to say, everyone was on edge as they gazed at me, and I gazed back at them. Sortiara was the first to say, "He's an assassin, father, this is incredible, but how did he do it without being trained by one of the older teachers?" With astonishment, disbelief, and perhaps a hint of surprise. But after glancing at me, her father said to her, "He hasn't received any instruction from any of them, Sortiara. His ability to do what he can is solely due to his ancestry." The bleeding effect struck him. I saw the shocked expression on her face when she said, "I've never heard of it progressing this fast from someone so young. He can't be much older than 14. Something happened to him, my daughter, but I can tell he's been trained in the old ways, our ways." He sipped her with a hint of pride, but I was deeply perplexed by the look on her face, which was one of bitterness, hate, and hatred. I felt a little uneasy when she said to her father, somewhat arrogantly, "The Brotherhood is a thing of the past, father. You should be embracing the Assassin's Order now. Not living in the past of what had been. One must look to the future, and having a real-life Uzumaki on our side will make this even easier. First of all, little girl, I don't know who the hell you really are or what you're all about, and the second thing is I respect your father a hell of a lot more than I do you right now," I said, pulling out one of my many throwing knives and throwing it into the air, cutting the rope connecting the dead Red Commander to the rope darts I hung him with. His body struck the ship's deck hard, drawing the attention of the younger assassins. I then walked forward and kicked the man onto his stomach, then reached down to remove the deadly part of the dart and pointed at them with it. She then continued, "You can't just say no to us, young man. We have every right to induct you into our order whether you like it or not." I immediately noticed the shocked expression on her face as well as the faces of those who were supporting her. I was genuinely laughing out loud. "So that's defending humanity's freedoms and the peace of the world by taking it from others. You sound more like a Templar than you do an assassin." I could see right away that my remark, "There are no more Templars, you young idiot, they are extinct," did not amuse her. She and the others looked shocked and almost incredulous as I threw it to her father, who caught it and had a look of pure fear in his eyes, knowing that we would soon be in serious trouble, and I couldn't blame them for thinking that. I was obviously not in the mood to hear this, so I went over to Gato's body and took off the small piece of Templar jewelry that identified him as a member of the Templar Order and held it up for her to see. I could see that she was still attempting to deny its existence, saying, "Just because he has some really old jewelry does not mean that our greatest enemy has returned. If they had, we would have heard something by now, father." She then approached her father and gently touched it, believing it to be some sort of illusion I had created. She should really think about who she was playing with before turning and approaching me, obviously trying to force her will on me. "You will quit trying to spread panic and terror among us. They are extinct and the conflicts are finished." I did, however, narrow my eyes, give her a little guttural growl, draw up my hood, and draw my hook blade as I moved slowly toward her. Part of what motivated me to do this was a speech Blackbeard had given to Steve Bonnet and my ancestor that day about Queen Anne's retaliation. A portion of it was my own emotions coming to the surface, along with my rage at what had been done to me and the fact that I knew the Templars still existed, but she would not accept this basic reality. I wanted her to realize what I had gone through. Even though, in all honesty, that wasn't my objective at all. I just wanted to make a damn point to Hera. The fact that I gave it to her, as I would later learn, was utterly scary. I almost laughed when I wrote this down, but her words still rang in my head with a defiant tone, and I had to get the last word in. "I know for a damn fact, little girl, that they still exist. I have killed 3 of their highest-ranking men. That day was the birth of the dangerous and deadly pirate lord who sought freedom, justice for the wronged, and vengeance upon the guilty." As I persisted in berating her, I noticed that everyone I spoke to afterwards had a genuine terror on their faces. "How are you? My knowledge and experiences. Have you witnessed 7 Templar lords manipulate you and your mother and demand that you be turned over to them so they can do whatever they want with you out of sheer fucking desire? I have a little girl, so do you have one? When I was just 6 years old that night, I witnessed them sending their 50 bodyguards to kill us, and they laughed the entire time until we began to slay their pitiful excuse for men who follow rich men and take other people's freedom without considering the repercussions. Her father would later tell me that it was something she desperately needed, adding, I watched my mother die in my hands bleeding out and trying to comfort me, even though it may not have been your mother, but at least you didn't have to watch her die because some Templar decided he could control the world. Everyone would later tell me that I was taking my emotions out there and that I was taking it out on her. You're playing the stupid girl right now, and all you'll draw in are morons and fools. You won't realize they're back until it's too late and you're being herded into cages. Until you realize what is truly happening here, do not give me instructions because I have the right to make my own decisions in this world, not you, I said, grabbing her by the front of her blouse and holding her close to me while I put the hook blade to her throat. She merely gave me a brief nod, expressing her fear of me at that precise moment. She wasn't alone in this though. Good now, excuse me, I feel like drinking and some sleep. After telling her all of this, I pulled my hook blade away from her throat and left, needing some time to collect my thoughts and blood before I did something reckless and violent to her. My cousin, her friend, Haku, and Old Salt himself were all right behind me, but I wasn't prepared for the water resistance members to follow as well. One of them, however, caught my attention as I asked him, "What's your name?" "Sir Ken." He answered me. "Mister," as I walked back into the town to get what little sleep I could and relax for the upcoming trials. I watched Ken nod his head at me and say, "Ken, remove the unwanted filth from the deck of the ship and prepare her for sailing to the land of spring immediately upon our return." The land of waves. The traveler captain's cabin. The room was obviously proving to be a treasure trove of knowledge, but the problem was that it was harder than they had expected to find what their leader had slightly overheard. Ao and a few of the men who had accompanied him to the traveler were confessing to themselves that this man kept a lot of files about all of his dirty deals. After reading only a few documents, one of the fighters remarked, "Sir, there is so much here that I don't even know what the hell I'm looking for, but after reading just a handful of this stuff I'm glad he's dead." Jackpot, gentlemen. At that moment, one of the men pulled aside a concealed panel that was a part of the compartment, revealing a very large safe with several locks on it. "It's got decent construction, but I can't see what's on the inside. We're going to have to open it fast and carefully," Ao said, turning to his men as he ran to the hidden cabinet that held the vault and used his own hidden Byakugan to examine it in great detail. He then let out a small curse word. As he proceeded to inspect the safe for weaknesses in planting his small explosive charges, one of the men with a rather large cigar in his mouth motioned for everyone to back off. Once he was satisfied with his work, he lit the cigar and set off the explosives. Almost everyone in the resistance knew him as Boom because he had a predication to large-scale explosives, so it was obvious that he knew how to crack a safe without causing any damage to its contents. He then said to Ao, "Man, this cheap bastard's safe was no challenge at all, man. I mean, really, can you give me a real challenge sometime when the fate of some country isn't on the line?" Everyone in the room rolled their eyes at him as he opened the safe and carefully inspected its contents. In a matter of minutes, a specific set of documents was found, which everyone read simultaneously, making their eyes as big as dinner plates. "Like I said, Ao, thank God it wasn't hard when the survival of some country is on the line," he said. After reading the document and realizing they were all going to be very busy and needed to deliver this to May and that child as soon as possible, everyone in the room could only agree with him. The land of waves, the Drunken Dragon Inn. Thanks to the many villagers and the water resistance members who were currently watching the more dubious Blue Sea crew members, such as Sortiara, who still couldn't get over how easily this young man had overpowered her in the first place, her father, and Old Salt, Naruto and Karen had been sleeping peacefully for the most part. Her father and Old Salt were at the board talking to the old man who had been identified as Tazuna the Bridge Builder, or as Naruto had come to call him, the Old Drunk. A part of her was starting to question whether doing something else with your life was truly so horrible, but she still found it hard to believe that such power was being wasted on these kids and that they were even being offered a choice. While Sortiara contemplated her own thoughts, both positive and negative, the two Uzumakis dreamed peacefully about a number of ancestors and their lives, but they had to acknowledge that they were both seeing a new ancestor and a city that they had never seen before. The language was, for the most part, utterly beautiful to linguists, and there were many peasants around them who appeared to have been starved. As they watched this new ancestor perform incredible new feats of free running they had never seen before, as well as new stealth tactics that would come in quite handy, Naruto and Karen realized they had spent enough time in their dreams to be feeling the effects of the bleeding from this new set of memories. They were also making the most of their time together, which was unthinkable unless you had been in a ninja squad. The crowd also cried out for justice in many cases, when they looked to Arno and the assassins to bring it to them, and in some cases, when they heard the name of their new ancestor mentioned. However, it was the new hidden blade that caught their attention, as they heard it described as a phantom blade that could shoot a small part into opponents at a great distance with fairly decent accuracy to boot. The final picture they had to solve showed a rapacious nobleman pleading with them to spare him and accusing the suffering peasants of being responsible for his well-earned fate. He threw him from a balcony into the hungry crowd below, who then beat the living daylights out of him and finally cut off his head, placing it on the spike as it died. After this, the two of them woke up fast and looked at one another, understanding that it had not been a dream. They also realized that they had a lot of questions that needed to be answered, such as how they were able to experience other people's dreams about their family and even that incident when they were 7 years old. Since he had been informed the night before that it was a drink named Captain Morgan. When they had decided to rest their eyes at the bar, Naruto snatched up a bottle of rum and took a swallow. He had to admit it was very nice and that he needed a little more this road. At this precise moment, Ao and the other resistance members who had been examining the traveler with a fine-tooth comb and a worried expression on their faces rushed into the room. Naruto was among the first to notice and hurried to him with Mei, who asked right away, "What is it, Ao? What did you find?" The water daimyo's wax seal was on the top of the large case he had brought over from the vault and set on a nearby table. When they opened the container, they were astounded by what they saw, and almost everyone in the bar was terrified because they understood that this small invasion of their island was insignificant in the big picture. It only took Naruto a few paragraphs to realize that hell was about to break out, and as he read the full page, he realized that more of the people he cared about were going to be in grave danger. He spent no time in preparing, saying, "Mr. Salt." The young guy turned to him and stated, "I want the warlock armed and ready to sail in about 4 hours, no more no less, and get it done, Mr. Salt. We are burning daylight and we are leaving," he said, "Captain," with a rapid response. Knowing that they needed to get the ships ready as soon as possible, Mr. Salt nodded his head after reading the document as well. He then turned to Mei, who had read on and realized they needed all the help they could get. He was about to ask her, but she beat him to the punch, saying, "If you're about to ask for my assistance and my people, you got it, Black Fox." When she handed him one of the documents from the safe, he was taken by surprise, just like everyone else. Needless to say, he was beaming broadly as he added, "I like it, Black Fox Creative, and thank you for your help." With a gentle nod, she said, "You saved me and my people, and the honor is mine to help you and those who still need our help against the land of water and its tyranny." Then Cyrus and his daughter went over and looked at the documents as well. They both felt a level of fear they had never experienced before because they realized that their country's sole source of income was now in danger and that they would have to get involved in some way no matter what. "Don't be rash about this, young man, you need help," Cyrus said as he approached the young man, who was getting ready to go with his young buddies who also appeared to be sacrificing for war. "How in the heck do I know that they will be willing to assist the Land of Spring when they won't even acknowledge that the Templars are still alive and a real threat? I don't trust her or her assassination order guidance. What gives you the impression that, despite the documents you possess, they will even believe you?" "Yes," a young man who wants to see him pause and take a time to reflect. "Because I know the daimyo and remember I'm a hero there, and besides I'm not going alone and I would really appreciate if you'd come with me, Capt," Naruto stated to his first captain after pausing his current task for a time. When Cyrus noticed that one of the hidden blades was missing and damaged, he offered the young man a sincere smile and said, "Well, you're not doing very well going like that without a wrist blade. Have you ever heard of the Phantom Blade before? Do you think Raven would know where to find one or how to repair my original wrist blade?" Naruto asked, glancing at his own and uttering a tiny swear word as he recalled his most recent ancestor. Her father then spoke back to him, taking one of his wrist blades and giving it to the young man, saying, "Use this one for the time being, young man, and it's the Land of Spring as fast as possible. I trust you to help them fight this coming invasion, and I will bring your Uncle Raven to see you both when we arrive in the Land of Spring." Sortiara had to acknowledge that she had never heard of this type of weapon before and was very curious. "What are you talking about, father? It will take more than a day to get the council as well as to retrieve the old man and get to the land of spring," Sortiara said, being somewhat alarmed. He smiled big at his child and then stated, "You forget how fast the Blue Sea really is, my daughter. By the time these two ships that are here thanks to our enemy's actions arrive in the land of spring, I will have already picked up Mentor Raven and informed the council and be there as well to meet you all. Who knows, I might even beat you all there." After realizing how swift the Blue Sea truly was, she turned to her own skeleton crew and gave them orders to take control of the Traveler and get it to the land of spring so they could aid them in the impending war. She would be on board the Warlock, watching the young people who had changed everything for her in a matter of hours as they all left the bar, wishing everyone luck on their journey and observing them as they repaired the damage to the village. But while Naruto was busy writing something in the scroll with the assistance of the old bridge builder, she noticed a small toad carrying the scroll with what appeared to be instructions to give it to Gaara, or the leader of the Hidden Send village. As soon as the document was given to Gaara, the toad vanished in a cloud of smoke, and she watched the young man approach the Warlock, climb aboard the ship, and begin guiding the crew as they get ready to depart. Since it was obvious that he did not want her there in the first place, she spent no time in boarding the ship and deciding to assist. Naruto knew from the sea charts that, if all went as planned, they would reach the land of spring by tomorrow morning. He still harbors his own worries and fears, but he still believes that he wants to make his own decisions and won't let others do so. He just needs to wait to meet Raven and make his own decisions about his future. Land of Wind, Hidden Send Village, Cage Tower. As Gaara and his brothers read the information their sensei had just given them concerning a specific Bond young man, Kankuro could not help but talk about what they were reading, even though Gaara was doing his best to comprehend what was happening. "This kid has a way of getting into some serious trouble. Is that all you can say after reading this? I mean, in a way he's been through even more shit than us?" his sister asked, rolling her eyes as she gazed at him. Both of her brothers gave her a startled look as they met her gaze, and Gaara couldn't help but raise an eyebrow in response to his sister's remarks. Before any of them could say anything, a small orange toad appeared out of nowhere. After giving Gaara a quick glance, the toad removed the small scroll he was carrying on his back and gave it to him. This turn of events truly caught Gaara off guard. "Thanks?" As the little toad assured them, "It's no problem, Sengai. Naruto told me that everything in this scroll is really important." "But we are told by the hidden leaf that he is unstable," asked Kankuro, still struggling to understand what the hell was going on. An amused little toad uttered, "Okay, that's funny, man, but don't believe everything they've told you." After opening the scroll and starting to read its contents, Gaara realized that everything was about to change and said, "You'll all have to read this." As Gaara unfolded the scroll and they read its words for themselves, the three of them got intrigued. "Gaara, please. Undoubtedly, the hidden leaf has attempted to persuade you all to not only locate me but also give me a wrapped gift. I sincerely hope that this letter finds you securely and has not ended up in the wrong hands. Don't believe anything they say, especially Jiraiya. I was 6 years old when I witnessed my mother being killed by a bunch of guys who had unfathomable power. After I fought the bastard, the seal broke more than a month ago, and I've been in a sort of coma for the entire time, not only reliving those memories but also reliving new ones for my ancestors' thoughts to my bloodline. Unfortunately, the village and these people decided it was safer to seal my memories away. After I woke up, they summoned me to a council meeting and exiled me from the village, but they insisted that I return to serve them, as if I were going to do that. Writing this scroll in the land of waves, I escaped before they could place the tracking seals on me and headed for the sea. However, I recently had to assist in preventing an invasion of the land of waves. Fortunately, Gato III and his army of red mercenaries did not survive to see the sunrise, and their plans to reduce these people to slaves were thwarted. My well-known luck for getting into trouble seems to be a constant. Regretfully, my well-known luck has struck once more. When we examined their ships, we found that they were a part of the advance force that the Land of Water used to attack the Land of Spring. Copies of the documents that we found are sealed near the bottom of this letter. In order to prepare them for the impending conflict, we are currently traveling to the Land of Spring. I have also spoken with the village leaders of the Land of Waves, and they concur that having a foreign military presence in their nation could be advantageous for both their safety and your ability to conduct business. I would really appreciate it if you could send some sort of assistance to the Land of Spring, but please be cautious because I don't currently trust the leaf. I'll let you know more later, but for now I need to be extremely cautious. Good luck, and I hope to see you soon. Needless to say, despite the fact that these were copies, the four of them were shocked by what they had read and promptly opened the documents. Everyone agreed with Konkuro when he declared aloud, "I really don't want his luck." "Now, what should we do?" Tamari asked. Baki gestured for them to follow him as he picked up the paperwork, saying, "We see what we can do and hope for the best." He then returned the scroll to Gaara. XX Afternoon Shinobi Academy, Land of Fire, Hidden Leaf Village. When Akima was informed that she had been inducted into the Shinobi forces under an emergency act as a result of her recent activities in seeking to have her brother exiled, she was shocked by what had happened to her. It goes without saying that she had to reconsider everything she had been told and what she knew about her life. She now felt only regret for what she had done. She also felt as though the entire military was in the academy classroom and had a sudden, strong suspicion that her brother was at the center of this storm. Right at this moment the door at the front of the classroom opened, revealing Jiraiya and Tsunade entering the room with a look of seriousness about them. The whole room began to quiet down almost immediately as Tsunade then cleared her throat and spoke so everyone could hear her. "Good afternoon. As of this moment the Hidden Leaf Village is officially acting under wartime conditions." Realizing that something significant had occurred, everyone in the room couldn't help but turn to face one another and start talking. "As you are all aware, we have officially lost 2 genin, one of whom is Sasuke Uchiha. In Sasuke's case, however, things are very different because we know who took him away from us, but..." As the special meeting went on, everyone's curiosity grew even more. The retrieval team members who were present, some of whom were still recovering from their injuries but were no longer in danger and could finally return to duty, were also quite worried about what lay ahead after realizing one of their members was missing. After waiting a few seconds for them to finish speaking, Tsunade said again, "But the retrieval mission was responsible for our main target leaving this village and the events that triggered it. A new retrieval will be set up just for him." Kiba simply had to inquire, "Who is this person, Lady Hokage?" since he had a really unpleasant feeling. After clearing her throat, the Hokage said, "Naruto Uzumaki, and that comes as a personal request from the Fire Lord himself," making herself very plain to everyone in the room. This unexpected development startled everyone. At this moment I'm turning the meeting over to Jiraiya Village Spymaster. "Thank you, Lady Hokage. Good afternoon to all of you. First, understand why young Naruto is so important to this village and why certain events that have been done are becoming a national crisis, forcing us to operate under wartime conditions. You first need to know about the subject." The statement, "Now Naruto was born on October 10th almost 14 years ago, and it was the day of the 9 Tails attacked the village. His parents were Kushina Uzumaki, his mother also known as the Red-Blooded Death, and his father was Minato Namikaze, also known as the 4th Hokage," had everyone listening carefully and aware that there was more to the young blonde than they had ever known. Jiraiya's sword was able to hear a pin. "That's right everyone, his parents are some of the most dangerous ninja we have ever produced. The Uzumaki clan, for example, were known for their abilities in the art of sealing that rivaled the best people in this village, including myself and the 3rd Hokage as well as the 4th. Everyone was staring at him as he continued. His mother was easily cage level and, for the lack of a better word, could kick the 4th's ass like it was nothing. But know this, technically as far as we know he is the last of his entire clan, making him extremely important to us. So when she died he became the last known member of his entire clan. Aren't there any others?" asked one of the ANBUs, who had met his mother and was taken aback by the remark. "It is possible that there are more out there, but at this moment he is the only confirmed surviving full-blooded member of the clan that we know of. He's also a member of the Whirlpool Lord's family, making him pretty much on the same level as a daimyo to us here in the village." Then, recalling something he had read in class, one of the Chunin in the room said aloud for everyone to hear, "Isn't the Uzumaki clan somehow connected to Lady Tsunade's clan?" "They are indeed, in fact, and without their help we would not even have this village. The land of Whirlpool convinced the Fire Lord of the time to support this village. Now you know how important this clan is to us." What most of you may not know is that right when the 9 Tails attacked, his parents were forced to seal it into him to protect this village. Unfortunately, many of the people here in the village saw him as nothing more than a demon, which was very bad on our parts because he could unleash it upon us in some form of revenge. Jiraiya continued, observing the shocked expression in each of their eyes. At the age of 6, he had to witness his mother being killed by multiple men who somehow managed to get into this community. She had survived the attack, healed, and started teaching him their clan's customs. Everyone was taken aback by this, and they started chatting among themselves again. Jiraiya knew this was going to occur. Unfortunately, because of these events and because of several things that happened, he blamed the village for her murder, and be perfectly honest, we think someone helped them do it, and this is where the seal comes in, and it was a memory seal. Now that everyone knew why he was acting the way he was, they realized that something terrible had occurred to him that night so long ago. That seal basically meant that all evidence of her murderers were lost to us. We were hoping to slowly remove it over time because of his negative feelings towards the village, but unfortunately before we could even begin the retrieval mission put just enough stress on him to completely destroy the seal, which is the reason he spent a month in a coma. They heard a pin drop this time and saw that almost everyone in the room had their mouths wide. I'm terrified of more than just the fact that it's a little frightening. Without the seal, all of the memories and experiences that made him a young prodigy have come flooding back. He was already a genin level ninja at the age of 6, and that night he even made his first kill. Actually, there were 8 of them. One of the ANBUs in the room with long purple hair then remarked out loud so that everyone could hear her, "Well, that's all good, but what are we dealing with right now?" He has a photographic memory in the bloodline that can help him distinguish a friend from an enemy, uncover items that are concealed in the environment, and use its improved healing powers. To put it mildly, he may easily be a low-level Jonin for all we know. Additionally, a third portion of this bloodline is rumored to exist, which I still find hard to accept. Everyone was astonished by that comment. The third part of his bloodline is rumored to allow them to literally relive their ancestors' memories and in some cases even gain their skills, and considering who his family line is, we could be in a whole hell of a lot of trouble. Tenten had remained largely silent throughout everything, but as he was one of her few friends, he made the decision to talk now. Who are some of his ancestors, and are you terrified of them? According to Jiraiya, who was starting to catch up to him in age, his grandmother for one. I met her when I was just graduating from the academy, and her name was Washi Uzumaki, and she was better known as the Red Reaper of the Sea. Everyone who heard about this woman was taken aback, and she was one of the most dangerous women to ever be either a ninja or sailor. Some even said she was an assassin on like some holy mission, and she even stopped the Second Ninja World War from breaking out almost a decade and a half early. Tsunade then went back up and addressed to them, "As of this moment you are all under SS rank security secret of this village, which means absolutely no gossiping about what you have learned here today, as the punishments might be either imprisonment for life or will just kill you." Her earnestness shocked everyone even more as she went on, saying, "You will all receive information about the targets and be prepared to deploy at any time. You will all be training and cooperating to successfully bring him in unharmed, am I correct?" Everyone gave her a nod or responded vocally. The room became as quiet as the cemetery. She then went on, "There is something else as well. If him and Sasuke ever patch things up and begin working together, we will have 2 of the most powerful genin out there to deal with, and considering that their mothers were best friends as well as their fathers, and the fact that the Uchiha clan when they were still around were in charge of the police force and were still investigating his mother's murder, we would have some problems on our hands if they team up in one revenge." She went on, "Remember, this is not over, it's just the beginning." While everyone in the room was still attempting to comprehend what she was saying. Rejected. XX ship Warlock, territorial waters of the Land of Spring. With a feeling of purpose, Naruto strolled the Warlock's deck, watching the crew repeatedly inspect everything to make sure all of the cannon armaments were operational and prepared for action. He soon came to one of the weapons and spotted a little lad maybe just a few years younger than him testing the cannon with his cousin. She regarded him in the eyes, wondering what was to come. The young boy in question was obviously anxious and had to pause occasionally because his hands were shaking from the strain they were all under. The boy even jumped a little when he felt a hand on his shoulder and looked up to see the black fox grinning down at him. Then, after giving him a pat on the back, Naruto urged him to go to the ship's sleeping quarters, saying, "Go get some sleep, boy, you need it badly." "But I can do this, sir, I'm fit." In an attempt to establish himself on this journey, the boy talked to his captain, who was now advising him to take it easy. At that, Naruto chuckled a little before telling him, "You're not the only one who needs rest. I guarantee you, youngster, you won't be the only one to go to sleep, and if our adversary does come, well then you will merely wake up to do with them." You chose wisely. It would not have been my choice to send him below at a time like this, Sordiara said as she approached him from behind as the young kid nodded his head and went to sleep below the deck. So you would keep them awake all night long without giving them a moment's rest, is that what you're telling me? Naruto asked, rolling his eyes in frustration before turning to face her. Feeling the crew's gaze on her, Sordiara said, I consider it at least. Right now it was not warranted. We are retiring to our cabin. The ship is yours until morning, Naruto and Karen said, glaring at her as they passed her. And if we don't make it to the capital of the land of spring, I'll throw your ass overboard personally, am I right? She truly bobbed her head and swallowed a little, particularly in terror, as she uttered, as the grave, sir. All right. Additionally, you two need to quit fighting or I'll break something you need for survival. Most of the crew was taken aback by this remark until they turned to look behind them and found Suigetsu and Haku motionless in the middle of an attack. Both of them were speechless and simultaneously exclaimed, how the bloody hell did he accomplish that? Within a minute, two cousins were soundly dozing on the captain's bed in the ship's main cabin, floating off into the realm of dreams and memories. When they opened their eyes, we were startled to discover what appeared to be some kind of evacuation. Karen said, where the hell are we now? To her cousin. In the distance, she heard explosions before her cousin could respond. At that very time, a father with a child sprinted by, accompanied by a young redhead girl. On the day of the attack on Whirlpool, the two of them realized abruptly that they were seeing their parents and hurried after them. The man stopped in front of a big ship with a black-haired man and a red-headed woman, but what really drew their attention were the features of the two individuals he had stopped by. While the man appeared to have the appearance of a Templar, the red-headed woman was obviously an assassin. A number of men in armor with red and gold Templar crosses on their chests stood beside the man. He stopped in front of a woman and a young man who could put the way down and said, we got out as many as we could, but the assassins of the order are not helping us one bit, sister. The two cousins were still trying to understand why there were Templars on Whirlpool and why the assassins were not attempting to kill them. Those traitorous bastards, I can't believe they are not trying to help defend their home, exclaimed one of the Templar troops with an educated growl. There is no telling how many people have died because of their actions today, the man with the black hair continued. We have to do something about them, Washi. Washi did not want to acknowledge that her husband was correct. I know, but I just wanted peace at the time and it ended the bloodshed and stopped the war for a time. I mean, the assassins and the Templar managed to achieve peace and finally work together to achieve peace and freedom. Why can't they have worked with us instead of against us? A Templar soldier next said, do not feel bad, my lady, it took us a long time to realize while the majority of our ideals were not wrong, we went about them the wrong and way. We still have to hunt down the dark ones of our order and stop them from plunging this world into darkness. Once more, things have been better and it's all thanks to you and him. Raven, please get our children and your family out of here and into the safety of the Hidden Leaf as soon as possible, the young guy stated, nodding his head before turning to face the younger red-headed man who was standing next to him. Raven, where's Anna? Washi asked, glancing around when she saw her sister. Law was gone. She's coming, right? The little red-headed girl asked, not wanting to accept it, but noticing her absence and looking into her uncle's eyes, recognized right away when it happened. As she saw him close his eyes and release the tears that were streaming down his cheeks, she observed that every adult had a similar expression of anguish and rage on their faces. Get what's left of our family out of here, brother, Washi said, approaching her brother and placing her hands on his shoulder to make him look into her eyes. No, you are both coming with us, both of you. He and the kids understood her words at once. Quickly grabbing him by the cheeks, she pushed her innocence aside and said softly, please get our family out of here right now. Need you to keep an eye on the order and take them out if you have to. Now please go, please. She looked down at her kids and saw them practically begging for her to stay with them, saying, don't go, mommy, please don't go, as he nodded his head in her direction. Do not worry, my little ones, I will be with you always, protect your brother, and please survive, she said softly as she gave them both a firm hug. Before anyone could say anything more, an explosion shook the area, sending everyone on high alert. Raven swiftly seized both of the kids and fled to his nearby ship. The three of them turned back to see the Templars and assassins fighting together to preserve their shared future and the hope for freedom and peace. Naruto was abruptly dragged out of the memory and into the main mental containment room where Nine Tails was kept. He dragged himself out of the water, approached the cage, and met the powerful creature's eyes directly. As it said, "You assassins are quite interesting, I must say. I must admit that damn seal made you quite annoying." Fox genuinely had a large smile on his face with many teeth. "I assume there's a reason I'm here, right?" said Naruto, rolling his eyes at the remark that the fox was somewhat correct. "Definitely not an idiot anymore, I like that." The fox genuinely laughed at this. "So what's your deal anyways? Why were the Templars so interested in getting a hold of you anyways?" he inquired. "I'll just go with an abridged version of my origins. To put it mildly, all 9 of us were created originally as an energy source with 10 tails, the fox said, laying down with his head on its paws because he had a feeling this would eventually come up. The story of the Sage of the Six Paths, the 10 tails, was something the first civilization created. Naruto knew right once what he was talking about. The big fox nodded and continued. "Exactly, all 9 of us convert the energy from nature itself into what you humans now call chakra. Human sages can also do it, but they have to be careful because it can kill or transform them into something else entirely." With little regard for his former sensei, Naruto queried the fox, "You mean like the pervert?" A snarl that sounded like it had originated from a woman was heard by Naruto, who swore, saying, "Don't even get me started on that pervert," but in essence you were correct. "So what you're saying is that all 9 of you were originally created as a renewable energy source, even though you were sentient lifeforms in a sense, and he still used you to power what super weapon?" he inquired. The fox then sighed. "No, you think, but even though they possessed the technology to control it, they could not guarantee it would last, as it had a mind of its own as well. What occurred when, say, 500 years ago, Sage entered and freed you all from that prison? As you are aware, the Sage gave birth to the 2 founding clans of the Stowed Leaf and became the first human sacrifice to contain us all. He also safely stowed away the body of the 10 tails in the hopes that it would never be restored. However, he is also your blood relative by blood. Now, kid, I need my sleep, and it's time for you to wake up." Naruto was shocked to hear this, but the fox decided that their time was up for the time being because there were tasks to complete in the outside world. Seeing his cousin's worried expression, Naruto hurried up to the wake and asked, "What happened to you?" Had a little talk with the fox, learned some interesting things about her. Knowing that one of the most powerful beings in the planet was a woman gave Karen a strong sense of pride. "Women, congratulations. What did you learn?" He was about to speak when the lookout yelled, "Land off the port bow." He got out of bed without yelling and started arming himself again as fast as he could, saying, "I'll tell you later, right now we got a lot to do." Along with nodding her head, she hurriedly armed herself and they went out onto the deck. XX, the land of spring, the capital city's spring dock. The warlock sailed slowly into the harbor as one of the many military ships came up alongside. "Hello, we need your papers to clear you to dock." Naruto hurried up to the ship's side before Sortiara could speak to the port authority official. The men recognized him from his previous visit and yelled, "We need to see the Spring Lord immediately, it's a matter of life and death." As a nearby dock was being cleared for them, the officer recognized the young man right away and nodded his head. To Sortiara's surprise, he then signaled for her to follow him, and both of them carried a piece of the documents they had recovered the morning of the impending battle in their hands. After spending some time at the port and alerting them to the 2 other ships that were still en route, they hurried to the palace and entered Koyuki, the daimyo of the Land of Spring's main throne room. When Koyuki looked up, she was taken aback to see the face of a young guy who had once again given her hope. She instantly jumped up from behind her desk, went over, and gave him an embrace that broke her bones. Once she was done hugging him and giving him a little room to both take a breath and move, she noticed he held up a rather official-looking documents with the seal of the Land of Water upon it. She had a rather bad feeling crept into her gut at seeing the documents and instantly knew that something bad was going to happen. "You better get your military here as soon as possible and read up, it's important," she said, looking him in the eyes and praying it was a horrible joke. A conference was called, so she nodded her head to him and signaled for her assistant to get the required man. She then beckoned for her visitors to join her into a pretty spacious room that had obviously been prepared for times of war. When the 3 of them entered the room, they were all very impressed. Koyuki opened all the paperwork right away and started reading them in an attempt to figure out how to get out of this situation. The good news was that they knew when the attack would occur, but the question was whether they would even have a chance. Regretfully, it appeared that there was no way out of the impending fight. Since numerous generals and admirals had now entered the room and started looking over the paperwork, she spoke with a hint of alarm, saying, "They're sending one of their super dreadnoughts here. The only thing we have that can even take it on at this time is our advanced fort." Naruto recalled the airships since her vile uncle had imprisoned him aboard one. What about the airships? This statement caught Sordiara off guard, and she eagerly awaited the Spring Lord's response. Normally that would be an option for us, but at this time the 2 airships we have are undergoing a massive refit at this time. And even if we were to speed up the process, they will not be ready for at least another 2 weeks. May understood why the Land of Water was attacking at this time. They knew that their primary weapon was inoperable, which allowed them to invade this territory without devoting a large portion of their men to the mission. While taken aback by the remark, Naruto also understood that things were going to get much more difficult. "What kind of military troops do you have at this moment?" One of the admirals then said, "We have exactly 8 fast attack cruisers and 6 heavy battle cruisers and 3 battleships in our navy that are all here in Port Export right now. They are receiving upgrades that will likely be done in 2 days. Well then we all have a big problem coming. It says here that they have 10 heavy cruisers, 8 battle cruisers, 4 battleships, and 1 super dreadnought on the way," said another admiral, who appeared to have just seen their deaths coming after reading the text. "We have 17 ships to their 23 warships. Everything they're bringing is in a heavier category than we have," one of the generals calculated. "Our only hope is the fort, but that will be their main target when the battle commences. We need help, my lady," said another commander in the room. "The Warlock can be added to your fleet. She was once a red mercenary ship, so she's quite well armed for combat," Naruto said, feeling compelled to take action. That is very gracious of you, sir, but even with its presence we are still outgunned by at least 5 ships and who knows how many ground troops," said one of the admirals. Then one of the generals suggested, "Maybe we might ask for assistance? There's no guarantee that they will help us at all, or we won't pay for it dearly in time. Let's not forget what the Hidden Leaf has done to him," said one of the other generals, making some fairly uneasy noises as he spoke. A voice interrupted at this precise time, drawing Naruto and his friend's attention. "Then maybe I can assist you? Sorry it took so long to get here, but my important passenger isn't exactly a light traveler. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce you to the current daimyo to the Land of Whirlpool and my mentor of the Assassin Brotherhood," Sordiara said, recognizing her father's voice at once and running over to embrace him. He quickly returned the child's affection before addressing the War Council of Spring. Uzumaki Raven. Nearly all of the War Council members were in a state of amazement as they watched a living legend enter the room. His face was obviously wrinkled from age, which gave him an aura of wisdom and reason, and his hair was cut short and primarily gray with a trace of dark red. After turning to face Naruto and grinning, the elder guy moved forward to stand in front of him and said, "It is my personal pleasure to finally meet you in person, Naruto." "It's a pleasure to finally meet you, mentor. Have you seen Karen yet?" said Naruto, still in awe of his first encounter with his distant relative. The elderly man went to face the Spring Lord, but was cut off by Sordiara, who appeared utterly taken aback by his appearance. "Not yet, young warrior, but I'm happy that Cyrus was able to finally find you too before our enemies could." Her father abruptly pulled her aside as she was ready to say something, saying, "Not now, my little princess, I really don't want to hear about it now." She glanced between him and the elderly guy. "It is a pleasure to finally meet you, my lady. I hope that the assistance of me and my associates was beneficial to your resistance movement." Everyone in the room was shocked by his outburst, but they also saw that he was demonstrating a great deal of respect towards his mentor. Raven then approached Koyuki and bowed to her. A few of the generals recognized him right away and were speechless, exclaiming, "Oh my god, he's real." The resistance was warmed by the fabled Raven. The council's decision to not interfere in this war was absolute and to be followed to the letter even by you. Sordiara's expression was one of pure unrestrained rage, and even Koyuki was speechless after hearing the testimonies from numerous of her people. "I do not answer to the Council of the Order. Do not forget that I am also the current daimyo of the Land of Whirlpool and the leader of the Assassin Brotherhood, which grants me servant advantages and rights that your order has no say in." Raven turned to her with an intense expression on his face that would spell her doom if she even opened her mouth again without permission. As Raven turned back to the Spring Lord, Sordiara immediately stopped talking and retreated to stand behind her father. "Pardon me for interrupting, but what can we do to secure your country's survival, my lady? One of the generals then approached the elder assassin, bowed his head to him, and said, "Unfortunately, Lord Raven, we do not have enough ships to even attempt to mount a decent enough defense. We have at this moment 17 ships compared to their 23, including one of them being a super dreadnought." The words shocked everyone in the room. As he approached the paperwork and extended his hand, Raven bowed his head and said, "May I?" After picking up the folder and giving it to what many would consider a living legend, one of the generals was nearly stunned. Raven then reviewed the documents and returned the folder. The old assassin was obviously thinking a lot when he finally decided, "I think you might have a better chance in this upcoming war with the inclusion of both the Warlock and the Blue Sea, but you will still need a lot of assistance if you want to live and come out on top. Additionally, you will still need to recover from the wounds you sustain even if you merge with the winner." One of the generals became even more interested when everyone in the room started to feel as though they had a chance of surviving. "How can you even the odds out for us? Remember, I am an Uzumaki and we were known as the ultimate seal masters of this world to such an extent that we were feared by practically everyone," Raven said, nodding his head before addressing the group of generals in one spring. "Lord, one of the seals we possess is a type of shield powered by nothing but chakra and strong enough to withstand multiple hits from a standard warship. How about the dreadnought, though?" Among the generals, one inquired. "The shields might be able to withstand one of the big weapons being fired at them, but that is all. However, that might be all you need to either abandon the ship and save the crew, or if you have the opportunity to quite possibly continue the fight for a little bit longer," Raven said. It was obvious that everyone in the room was intrigued by this technology. Is this seal like to the one used in the Hidden Sand settlement in the Land of Wind? Raven raised his eyebrows. "We actually helped them design the original seal they use and they've improved it in their own way, but we possess some of the more advanced forms of this technology and have reinforced it in ways you could never imagine. Your technology at this time is the only thing at this time that can only compare to our seals." Naruto then chose to speak. "The Traveler also on its way. It may not be the fastest ship, but we can defend itself. May not being much, but it's better than nothing." After saying, "We have much to do, younger one. After all, there is one ship that might just be able to take out the dreadnought and it's yours." Raven approached his great nephew and placed his hands on his shoulder before signaling that it was time to leave. "Me?" he asked, perplexed, until he understood the elderly man's meaning. Raven stated urgently, "This is definitely what your mother told you I was holding for her, but it's yours now and could be this country's only hope. Do you need anything from us to make all this happen?" Koyuki asked her generals as she hurriedly halted the two Uzumaki who were about to leave her room. "Is there any special equipment we could use, Cyrus?" Raven inquired, turning to face Cyrus. "Can I see a supply list and possible weapons you have at your disposal that we can equip to our ships so that we can aid you in the coming battle?" Cyrus asked, nodding his head before approaching one of the generals. The general nodded hastily and proceeded to assist Cyrus in obtaining the required supplies. Naruto, unsure of the direction his life would go, followed Raven out of the room. XX Harbor Land of Spring. The Warlock and the Blue Sea. Suigetsu, Haku, and Karen had seen Captain Cyrus disembark from the Blue Sea with an elderly gentleman, and they were currently waiting at the Warlock's pier for Naruto's return. That was about 30 minutes ago, and the three of them were starting to worry about whether anyone in this country would even believe them. Suigetsu, on the other hand, was starting to worry a lot about his own future. Haku was also growing increasingly alarmed as she saw a lot of engineers and soldiers moving toward the ships and knew her blonde buddy had succeeded, saying, "Looks like he did it." Disregarding everyone around him at the time, Suigetsu declared, "I'll believe that when I see it, Ice Princess." Since he had recently regained his freedom, he had to be honest and say that he did not want to consider or even experience the possibility of a future conflict with the Land of Water. It was obvious that something was going to happen when Naruto, Cyrus, his daughter, and the elderly man returned to the pier. Naruto approached a number of the crew members right once and led them to the Blue Sea. "We are leaving the Warlock here, and we're all going to the Land of Whirlpool for training and to pick up something that could not end this conflict," Naruto said, turning to face Karen, Haku and Suigetsu. "Okay? Oh no, count me out of the one," he stated, gesturing to the Blue Sea for them to follow him. However, Suigetsu had a look of extreme tension on his face as he said, "I am not going on some wild adventure with you guys that's going to get me murdered. I'm not going to stay here." After he came up with a straightforward strategy, Naruto merely shrugged his eyes and said, "Yeah, that's a good idea Suigetsu, stay right here. And in about 7 to 8 days if we fail to stop the Water Navy you'll get to see what half-burnt vicious Water Nation soldiers who want to kill you by the way look like." Suigetsu started to weigh his alternatives and, although he detested acknowledging his debt to others, he also thought about the chance to exact revenge on those who had attempted to use him as a weapon and had allowed him to be experimented on. Well, what the hell are we waiting for then? Haku and Karen both exclaimed, "How the bloody hell does he do that?" in complete shock at what they had just witnessed. "Are you going to stay and help them prepare?" Naruto asked, turning to face Mei, who had now approached him. "They need all the help they can get right now," she said, nodding her head. "How about you?" "I'm going to be all right. This is something I've got to do it if I want to learn more about my family's past and what my future holds," he replied to her. Looking into his eyes, she placed her hands on his shoulder and said, "I hope you find what you are looking for, but don't forget to come back and help us." "I won't promise." On the way to the land of Whirlpool, the XX Blue Sea is an open ocean. On the Blue Sea deck, Naruto and Karen now stood in front of Raven. Raven inspected them both before approaching Karen and grinning warmly and saying, "It is a pleasure to finally meet you, Karen. Your father was always interested in helping people and I believe you have inherited his traits in that." Realizing how accurate that comment was, she smiled sadly at him and said, "My father always talked about a caring uncle." In reference to his great-uncle Raven, Naruto recalled some of the things his mother had told him. "I remember when I was about 5 years old my mother telling me about you a little bit." After a little chuckle, the elderly Uzumaki addressed them, saying, "It is a pleasure for me to meet you too and to know that our clan is still alive, but if we are to live at this time, I need to know how proficient you are in the ways of the Brotherhood." Following that, Raven gestured for Karen to approach, saying, "I will now test you in the art of combat. Come at me with the intent to kill but only use your skills as an assassin." Although the brief flight only lasted roughly 40 seconds, she provided the elderly guy some information about herself by nodding her head as she turned on the wrist blade and hurried ahead at him. "Are you not still having animus symptoms?" he questioned her. After dusting herself down, she stood up again and nodded, saying, "Yes, I'm up to Hatham right now." Following that, he smiled amiably at her and said, "Only Hatham and you are already this skilled, do not worry you will master more in time." As her uncle turned to face Naruto, she couldn't help but smile and say, "Same rules apply although I'm beginning to feel my age with you." After that, Naruto raised his hood and proceeded. He chose to proceed cautiously rather than jumping into recklessness. As if they were a pack of animals relishing their next meal, the two of them looked each other down before suddenly launching into a barrage of blows. Each attack was repelled by both sides, who were unable to identify a distinct advantage. Naruto's side had some experience in addition to the benefits of youth, while Raven's side had more experience in the unknown. Naruto could see that Raven was holding back, but not by much. In order to keep them both safe, the elder Uzumaki had to end the fight. After taking a time to collect his breath, Raven confidently glanced at his niece and nephew and indicated for them to sit down next to him. "I guess you have many questions?" As Naruto posed his first series of inquiries, the two of them nodded their heads rapidly. "What the hell happened to us, Uncle? Why is there an assassin's order in the Brotherhood?" "I will give you the abridged version. After all, when you both begin to relive your grandmother's memories, which I believe will happen, you will understand everything," Raven said, sensing that this moment was imminent. "Why do they act so superior?" Karen wondered, turning from her great-uncle to her cousin and back again. "I have asked myself the same question so many times. Glad to see it's not just me," Raven said, laughing uncontrollably. "However, to answer your question, the First Ninja World War was the reason they were created. So they simply decided that they could disregard the creed and do whatever they pleased?" Naruto questioned him. "Yes and no. They initially only wished to stop another conflict from starting the way we did, but they went too far and adopted the practices of the ancient Templar order," he told them. "Uncle, are you implying that they became Templars?" In an attempt to process what he had just informed her, Karen exclaimed out loud. "Unfortunately for us, they became more dangerous than the Templars. Your grandmother and my father were some of her first victims, almost plunged into a lamentable nations into another war trying to gain their so-called control and peace." Raven told them this. "Who is this woman you are talking about, Uncle?" The way you said her was with a lot of disgust and hatred, something that I know all too well, asked Naruto, who was intrigued about this woman. She was the daughter of my uncle, one of them anyway. My father had a twin brother but also a younger brother who became quite hungry, Raven said, letting out a little laugh as he realized that the Brotherhood might have a chance to return. What did she do to our grandmothers and yours? Karen questioned him. They were responsible for the Brotherhood almost becoming extinct, but their actions also gave us an ally that we never had before. Are you referring to the Templars who assisted us in defending Whirlpool? Naruto questioned him. Your grandmother was the one to lay the groundwork for peace, but not all of the Templars wanted the war with us to end, and with the Assassin's Order at the time competing with them for control over this world, we were practically trying to stop the bleeding of a patient who was still being assaulted by an enemy, Raven said, even more shocked to learn that they had relived some of their parents' memories. What distinguishes them? Karen asked. For when they realized that freedom was something that they could never control and any attempt to do so only created more suffering, and in rebellion, they realized that their ways were not flawed but had been used by greedy man who only desired control over all who live upon this world. Raven stated to them. It took a few months in the year for us all to begin to truly work together, and they realized that each of us had a role to play, but they realized that each of us had a role to maintain order, control and peace during the times of peace, but to still allow freedoms to not only be expressed but also experienced so that everyone could live a happy and safe life without the threat of war or death. Everyone was listening to this conversation, including the few Order members who were perplexed as to why they had never heard any of it before. Naruto started to comprehend what his uncle was saying. Thanks to this new system that we had worked on together, we were able to prevent many innocent people from dying or being used as slaves, and eating us was a third group from the shadows called the Freemasons. They kept an eye on both of our groups and identified any threats that might lead to another war or the death of innocent people. The epic war that had raged for over 1,000 years came to an end when Naruto discovered, to his amazement, that they had established a sort of symbiosis with one another. But I take it the two groups refusing to evolve wanted to ensure that the war would never stop. I'm afraid so. The Order was the first to be dealt with, but we knew that the Templars of the old ways would one day return and we would have to fight them. The fact that the Order was coexisting with them still raised a lot of questions, which Karen found fascinating. But if they were your enemies, why are they living with you? That's what your grandmother would think. In one significant battle, we prevented the Second War from starting too soon and attempted to make peace with the Order, which was successful because the key players who had started the conflict were all killed. We recognized that even though the remnants of the Order changed their ways to some extent, they might still pose a threat to us. Remembering what he had seen in his mother's recollection, Naruto turned to face the few Order members on the deck who were observing them like dogs. They let you and the Templars do the fighting, then took a good bit of power? Raven raised his eyebrows and said, only a few of them wanted to preserve the peace. They may have a good deal of power, but it's come at a price, since I am still technically the daimyo of what is left of the land of Whirlpool. When we see them, should we be worried? Both of them questioned him. Yes, you should. There were only 3 of the old guard left that we will have to deal with in their power, and they will do anything, even killing us, to keep it. They should be prepared for battle, Naruto said, nodding his head. If they want to fight us, I won't deny them, but I won't start it either. Good, Raven remarked after giving a nod. I have asked the captain to go a little slower. We will arrive in the morning. Rest now, and I'll see you in the morning. XX Land of Fire, Uzumaki Compound. In front of the Uzumaki clan's well. Hidden compounds. Danzo and 2 of his elite bodyguards waited for his 2 guests to arrive. Iruka Amino, one of the best instructors at the Ninja Academy of the Hidden Leaf, was the first to show up. To their astonishment, Itachi Uchiha, a secret spy and member of Akatsuki, was the next person to arrive. The 2 rude bodyguards moved far away to allow the 3 men some solitude. I only wish this meeting was under more agreeable circumstances, Danzo said after giving them both a nod. Being aware that his time here was limited, Itachi only nodded his head before saying, as do I. However, we must make this meeting rather short, I'm afraid, as I have very limited time to spend here. With a nod of comprehension, Iruka said, I also agree we have to keep this short. Jiraiya has already dispatched his spotty network to locate Naruto. With a look of disdain and hatred on his face, Itachi said, we were trying to avoid him leaving the village. This only makes him a bigger target for the Templar Order. Remember the Assassin's Order? They've been a little more active lately, and we still don't know if Raven has made it out alive," Danzo said, recalling the former assassin's sharpshooter who was also Naruto's great-uncle. "Those two groups are going to get us all killed. Can't they see once we started working together that this world is so much better?" Iruka thought, feeling as though all they had done had been in vain. One of the few surviving members of the Templar Knights, who fought for freedom for all and peace and order, Itachi approached the young academy teacher and said, "You will see Naruto again and will have the opportunity to tell him about his past that he does not know at this moment more than I will. I may have been his teacher, but with everything that has happened he may see me as only one of the Dark Templars who will do anything for their order and control," Danzo said to them in an attempt to give them some hope and a focus for their attention. "We must not mourn the past but look forward to the future. That is what Raven would say, as well as your teacher the fourth Hokage. If it had not been for that attack upon his wife when she was giving birth to Naruto, we would have restored peace and freedom to this village and disposed of the Dark Ones." As he examined the small necklace with the Brotherhood symbol on it that had been removed from around his neck, Itachi remarked, "If Naruto is anything like his mother, my mentor, and we will be quite safe, but we need to help him and guide him. I only wish my training in the assassin arts had been finished before her death." Knowing that their time was running out, Danzo nodded his head before saying, "You have a point, but until we can get in touch with our former allies and hope they are still alive, we're the closest thing we have right now to a full-fledged assassin. Follow the creed and keep an eye on our enemies as best you can." "Lord Mason, it will be completed, but one of my mothers?" Itachi questioned the elderly Warhawk. "She is still in a coma. Tsunade may be the only one who can save her, but at this moment it is still too dangerous to bring her into our little circle for the moment, that is. I think we can trust her. It's Jiraiya I'm worried about. Everything he's done reminds me of the old Templar ways," Iruka responded. Danzo concurred with the young Templar Knight. "Since you are part of the mission to recover Naruto, use it as an opportunity to keep an eye on him and try to find candidates for both your order and the Assassin's Brotherhood should the opportunity present itself, and make sure that he is not one of the enemy." "I stand, Lord Mason. I must return to my home now and prepare for the next day. May the Father of Understanding and Freedom guide us all. I want to see if anyone else will accept the challenge before I start the chapter by introducing the idea for a collection of short stories that are based on a rather unusual week in August." "All right, Snuffy. All you need to do is figure out a way in for us," Conan said, standing beside her pet and best friend, Snuffy the seal. Strangely, no one else seemed to want to be too close to this island, so the little seal nodded his head to her before jumping from the top of the boat into the water surrounding the land of whirlpools, which was rumored to be where the remaining Jinchuriki had gathered. She was on deck with one of Pain's bodies, Hidan, who appeared to be as bored as possible, and Kakuzu, who strangely held a rather large HD camera as though he was expecting to see something and was constantly muttering to himself, "I am going to make so much money off of this." At that moment, Snuffy leapt from the ship's bow, but he never reached the water because a big 25-foot great white shark with a headband that resembled a whirlpool on it leapt out of the water and quickly ate the small seal. When Conan released a girly-like scream for the first time anyone could recall, she noticed that Kakuzu was hanging over the railing, recording the entire event, while holding a cell phone in his other hand. He said, "Yes, work it, shark, work it. Oh, Discovery Channel, I have a great idea for a new week-long thing." Hidan was holding up a sign that read 10.5, and he had conveniently changed into what appeared to be a shark costume. Pain, on the other hand, could not believe what he had just seen as he realized this was going to be the longest week they had ever endured. Holy shish. Shark Week. It's a terrible week for SEALs and Akatsuki members. However, it's pretty fucking awesome for everyone else. Yes, I enjoy Shark Week, but it also inspired me to write some original stories with sharks and everyone's favorite villainous group as the heroes or villains. And since I do plan to turn this into a story quite soon, I'd like to see if anyone else comes up with their own collection of short stories based on this idea. Off the coast of Whirlpool in the Blue Sea. Even though the morning had arrived sooner than anyone had anticipated, Raven and Cyrus were prepared for the day's events. "Are you sure you want to do this, old man?" they asked. Raven addressed his former pupil, saying, "We both know they have accumulated far too much power, my old student. They put their claws into too many people for my liking, but burying their heads in the sand has had an unfortunate effect on their power and abilities." After giving a nod, Raven stated, "That it has, my student. Now it's time to end this conflict once and for all, as we have a real enemy to fight." Knowing that he needed to get them ready for what was about to happen, Raven turned around and approached Naruto and Karen as they entered the deck and stood in front of them. Within a couple of minutes we will arrive at the town of Maelstrom of the land of Whirlpool. Naruto, I believe it would be beneficial to give you your own hidden blade to replace the damaged one. Though taken aback by the remark, Naruto promptly removed Cyrus's wrist blade and walked away. He then saw Raven take out a box and open it to reveal two brand-new wrist blades, but he quickly recognized what they were. Are those phantom blades? I have a feeling this will come in quite handy, Raven said, picking up one and giving it to his young nephew. After Raven gave Karen the second one, Naruto put it on his arm. Karen put it on right away and started using the new weapon. As she admired her new weapon, Karen said aloud, I got a bad feeling this is going to come in quite handy today. Then, much to her surprise, the elderly man gave her a set of weapons that she was all too familiar with from her early years. As I recall, this was your father's personal favorite weapon. After that, she grasped them and marveled at the hook swords, which her father loved. For everyone to hear, the lookout yelled, Land ahead. The land of Whirlpool, the town of Maelstrom. After docking the Blue Sea Raven and Naruto's motley crew of friends quickly walked through the village on their way to where the Central Council meeting room was located in the main tower of the village. The majority of the village's governmental duties were managed here, and the Assassin Order chose to establish their primary operational base there as well. It looks a little better than when I first went to the Land of Waves, but is it supposed to be like this? Naruto asked his uncle after taking some time to consider the town and its current condition. Because of our current isolation from the rest of the world, unfortunately this has also meant that we have been unable to rectify certain things or have the town or village if you will grow, Raven responded, demonstrating that he understood what his nephew was saying. As they entered the tower, unsure of what lay ahead, Naruto comprehended what his uncle was saying. When they walked into the meeting room, they saw that all 5 of the personal council guards were standing alertly, waiting for anything to happen. A slightly raised table in the middle of the room held the 5 seats that were currently occupied, 3 of which were about Raven's age. Then, with a devilish grin, the person in the middle of the table said, As always, it is a pleasure to see you before us. Welcome back, Lord Uzumaki. It is not every day that I receive such a warm welcome. Do you even know the reason why I left so suddenly? Raven could easily infer from the sarcastic tone in his voice. With a great deal of respect, one of the younger members stated, We only know it has something to do with the land of Spring Elder. However, the older men of the council looked disgusted. Raven assessed their reactions and attempted to predict what would happen next. That it does as the current daimyo of the land of Whirlpools, I have answered the call of assistance that our new ally the land of Spring has requested of us. The 3 Assassin Order elders exchanged glances before the one in the middle said, Unfortunately we will not be aiding them in this endeavor. They then all laughed a little. This remark startled Naruto, who asked, On whose authority? The young man's decision to question them shocked the 3 elders, who said, This council does not recognize you boy as having anything to add to this meeting. Raven's response was much more forceful than before. I'm afraid he does. This is my nephew and niece and you will show them the proper respect. We were unaware that you even had family left, Lord Uzumaki, said the 3 elders, their smiles turning into a devilish grin that would enrage any jealous demon who heard the mention of a niece and nephew. Instead of taking offense, Raven chose to inquire further about their remark. I was also unaware that any of my relatives had survived until now. Well, it is good that there are more than one of you now, but you have not discussed this issue of assistance with the land of Spring with us. This is a decision you cannot make on your own, my lord. One of the Order elders grinned cruelly and said, Not without our cooperation, that is. Unfortunately for you are only here to handle the Assassin Order's business and affairs. You have no say in what I decide for what is left of this country. Naruto could not help but feel his anger rising and realized that something was seriously wrong with this meeting. Raven also picked up on these signals. As they put their planning action into action, the 3 elders could only smile and say, We have decided that you no longer serve the interests of our order or what is left of this country. I'm afraid you've overstepped your authority, Elder Raven. One of the other elders stood to his full height and gazed at them. As such, your members of the Assassin Brotherhood will be absorbed into our order and trained in our ways, and as for you, Elder, you will be forcibly retired from service. It would appear that you need a lesson in violence of just who you're messing with, so let me to show you how we brought the pain in my days, said Raven, who had started to move forward without using his keen for support after Naruto and Karen realized right away that the shit was about to hit the fan and had started to back up slowly. With a self-assured smile, Raven recalled the song he had heard in the saddle as a child. The 5 guards then advanced on him in the hopes of capturing him without a struggle. Naturally, the stupid guard had to say something like, "All right, old man, just come along quietly." "Oh no you didn't," Raven said, giving him a somewhat disapproving glance. "Old man?" Raven said, and as soon as he finished, he erupted into action. The first 2 people on his left felt his attack. He threw this walking stick into the air and then killed them by driving his hidden blade into their chests. He then swiftly kicked the middle member with his back before turning around and driving his hidden blade into the man's chest, killing him as well. The final 2 were taken aback by how swiftly the elderly man had eliminated their 3 companions, only to see him rise to his full height while still holding their comrade. They swiftly attempted to murder the elderly man with their throwing knives, only to see him use their deceased comrade as a human shield. Raven let the body fall to the ground as soon as they ran out of weapons, revealing that he now held a rather large handgun in each hand. He then swiftly took aim and pulled the trigger, killing them by sending the bullets crashing into their skulls. The room was left in shock as everyone heard him exclaim, "Old man, my ass." The 2 youngest members of the council now stood by Raven's side with hateful expressions on their faces, adding to the 3 elder members of the Order's anxiety. They could not believe that one old man had killed 5 of their best trained soldiers and had failed to subdue one old man. One of the elders yelled, "How dare you betray us?" But after simply meeting his eyes, the young man said calmly and purposefully, "You betrayed us first, you kept a great deal from us, and now you choose to destroy the delicate balance we've had for so long. Your desire for power has already destroyed you and you don't even know it," said the other young man. One of the elders saw that Naruto and Karen were no longer standing behind their uncle at this precise moment. He turned around to see them both murdering an elder without a second thought. The elder who appeared to be in command launched an immediate attack, lowering a medium-length knife to protect himself. Naruto was carrying a pair of kunai, and he soon demonstrated that he was a skilled user of them. For lack of a better term, the elder found it extremely difficult to defend himself against this young child. He was repeatedly slashed deeply in the arms and torso, and only a few times was he able to strike his young opponent, leaving 2 minor wounds on the young man's face. The elder, who had by now decided that he had had enough and knew that he needed to flee, watched helplessly as the young, red-headed girl with glasses proceeded to use her hook swords to cut his only surviving comrade to pieces. He had successfully kicked Naruto back a few feet before hurling a tiny bomb at the young man, which exploded on his left side, engulfing most of his arm, a portion of his upper body, and the hood itself in flames. The elder swiftly took advantage of this diversion to flee through a nearby window, and Naruto was able to roll around on the ground and put out the fire before it could spread or harm him permanently. When Naruto looked up to see that his uncle had left, he was grateful that some of the materials he had used to make his battle robe could withstand fire for a while. He then turned to face his helpful cousin, and the 2 of them nodded before heading for the window. When the elder realized how profound the Brotherhood's influence had been, he found himself on the street with what was left of his order. He turned to see Raven standing no more than 5 feet away. When the elder decided to try to control the crowd, there were only 10 order members left standing next to him. He said, "Lord Raven is a traitor to us all. He has killed the other members of the council, and if we do not stop him right now, he will do the same to you all." But then his own man started screaming as he saw the 2 young assassins slash through his men as if it were nothing. Naruto was now easily defeating these so-called assassins with the maelstrom sword in one hand and one of his kunai in the other. This infuriated the elder, who then watched as Sortiara and her father took up their guard, defending the civilians while the other ninjas and assassins in the whirlpool engaged his motley crew of fighters. The elder felt a powerful blow to his head that sent him flying up to 10 feet away and colliding with the building's side before he could even attempt to attack the young assassin. When he looked up, he saw a man who some might characterize as more machine than man. "Now you treacherous dog, you wouldn't happen to be trying to kill what's left of my family, would you?" The older man said, listening to the sounds of metal and wood as he walked forward, looked at the older, and then turned to Raven, removing his hat. However, the elder's expression was one of both fear and rage. "Stay out of this, Silver," "It's none of your concern, Templar dog," he said. After giving him a rather irate look, the man now known only as Silver added, "My brother was a Templar knight who I might add made a promise to protect people, just like his assassin wife." The elder, unable to control his rage and anger, rose to his full height and attempted to stab Silver in the stomach. However, he was startled to see a black sword with red highlights and what appeared to be a whirlpool protruding from his chest. A second later, another sword emerged from his chest. After approaching the elder with a look of pure hatred on his face, Naruto asked, "Is all this death really worth all of your ambitions and desire for power? How many people have you sacrificed for your brand of justice and control?" Before meeting the man's eyes. As the boy said, "My only goal was to protect what little we had left, and to see if your brotherhood will finally die out." The elder could not help but become even more enraged. "And you failed. I know that my grandmother gave your people a chance to put their differences aside and work for a better future, and instead, when the land of whirlpools needed you the most, you all just walked away. So many innocent people died, and then you buried your head in the sand pretending as if nothing was happening outside of this island," Naruto replied. The older man then let out a cruel chuckle. "All of the Templars, from the ones who follow the blood red cross and those of the knighthood, are dead and gone. There is no one evil left in this world that our form of order cannot stop, and there is no enemy left to fight. I really wish your statement was true, then my mother might still be alive," Naruto said, reaching into the pocket on the left side of his jacket, which was burned but largely undamaged. He then held the small piece of jewelry in front of the elder for everyone to see. "Then kill them, assassin. Maybe you can fix what's wrong with all of us," the elder said, acknowledging in his last moments that he had been mistaken about something but refusing to change as an old man. Next, Naruto gave the elder a nod and said, "May you be judged fairly in the next life for your actions and desires. Rest in peace." His voice was comforting. The elderly elder merely nodded his head before closing his eyes and hitting the ground motionless as his final moments passed from this world to the next. As a sign of respect, Naruto placed the man's arms on his chest and reached down to remove the maelstrom from the corpse. By this time, he had finally managed to look at himself and realized that he would need new clothes. He first hoped to salvage what he was wearing, but realized that he couldn't, saying, "Oh man, these aren't even a month old and already destroyed, for lack of a better word." But as he gazed at the field of carnage, Raven gave him a sincere smile and a pat on the back before yelling, audibly enough for everyone to hear, "I'm too old for this crap." As the strange man with a mechanical arm and the village's old leader gestured for the two cousins and their friends to follow them, everyone laughed and started cleaning up to square. Ninja Academy, Land of Fire, Hidden Leaf Village. Jiraiya was currently keeping an eye on the numerous teams under his command. Although he had been impressed with their progress thus far, he could not help but feel a little uneasy because he knew that their main target would be difficult to find and apprehend. A young ninja who is obviously of the Chunin rank approaches the elderly wise man at this precise moment, holding a piece of paper, and says, "Lord Jiraiya, this just arrived for you from a courier ninja." As the young man started reading the contents of the envelope, Jiraiya swiftly grabbed it and feinted him. Then, grabbing everyone's attention, he said, "All teams fall in right now, we have our first possible lead." "So what happened?" Kakashi asked, naively aware that something was happening as he approached the Sannin. "I don't have all the details, but one of my contacts was traveling through the Land of Waves and says something really big just happens there and that we need to check it out much more thoroughly." "So how are we getting there?" was Kakashi's next question, and he nodded his head. He then added, "We will be heading to Phoenix Nest Harbor first to board our ship," to which Jiraiya grinned broadly. The one-eyed ninja then questioned, "What, a civilian ship?" "No, a fast attack cruiser, the Phoenix." After realizing how crucial it was for this nation to get Naruto back, Kakashi went home right away to prepare for this special journey. The Land of Whirlpools, Uzumaki Estate. Though saddened that his battle rope had been, for want of a better word, ruined, Naruto was actually quite happy that he had not suffered any serious injuries. Raven, on the other hand, was admiring the clothes and had to concede that they had at least done their part to keep his nephew safe. Since he could tell that Taylor was not a professional, Raven asked him, "You made them yourself, did you not?" While admiring his old clothes and watching his two uncles walk down a corridor before following him, Naruto remarked, "Yeah, I made it myself with some of the materials that were still sealed inside some of the scrolls. I have to admit they were something that I had become quite attached to." "So what's your story?" Naruto asked his new uncle, whom he only knew as a Silver. Silver followed him as he spoke. "It's a very long story, lad, but the quick answer is that my brother was your grandfather and a powerful Templar knight who along with your grandmother finally stopped the bloodshed between the two orders." In reference to his brother.in.law, Raven nodded his head before saying, "Thanks to the assassin's order your grandmother and I were being hunted down like dogs with orders to be killed on sight. It was thanks to him and his brother that I was not killed when they captured me. They got to me before she was able to rescue me." "That's cool, but why do they call you Silver?" said Naruto, impressed. "Well, my full name's Jonathan Smith, and as for my brother he was William Smith." With a broad smile, Naruto paused his stroll and recalled a story his mother had told him. "Long John Silver from Treasure Island, that's where you got your nickname?" he asked. "That's right, lad. I always did like him in the story, and just like him I became a pretty good ship's cook and a sailing master." Raven gave a nod as he spoke. Unfortunately, during the attack on the old village he almost became like Silver by almost losing his leg. Thankfully Tsunade's grandmother was an excellent medic and was the one who taught her everything she knows and was the one who saved his leg. He saw that the compound was quite large for being underground, with a lot of things to see and do, as the two men continued down the corridor until they reached a hidden door and entered a large underground compound used for the Brotherhood's training. Then he saw his uncle walking down a very calm corridor that led deeper into the mountain's ground, where the estate had been built. After less than a minute of walking, they came to a large cave area that could easily rival several dozen enormous aircraft hangars. 3 ships were sitting in this area, one of which he recognized as the Blue Sea, but the other 2 were completely unknown to him. The ship on the left had obviously been to sea and appeared to have seen a lot of action because some of the visible damage it had sustained had not yet been fixed. The 2 ships were sitting in a special dry dock being worked on. The ship on the right caught his attention because it appeared, for want of a better word, brand new and had never before seen the open ocean. While the ship on the left had obviously suffered some serious damage, but it still looked seaworthy and was being prepared for battle if it came to defending the island. "This is your ship now. It would have been your mother's if she were still alive," Raven said, gesturing to the ship on the right. After recalling a number of tales his mother had told him about a strong ship her uncle was keeping for her, Naruto realized this was it. He became even more interested in learning more about the ship, asking, "What is she?" Following a thorough inspection, Raven declared, "The ship belongs to a class of vessels called Rebirth. Her exact classification is a fast attack battlecruiser." As he examined the ship closely and took in every detail, Naruto was impressed and said, "So she's built to be fast and do as much damage as possible in a fight." Raven raised his eyebrows and then pointed to the ship's porthole. "As you can see, Naruto, she's built to be extremely fast thanks to her design when she's in the water, and the ram on the bow also helps her cut through the water with ease. Her stern is equipped with 4 heavy-duty reinforced propellers which allow her to easily reach a cruising speed of over 30 knots without a problem." Silver continued by pointing to the masts. "She may only be equipped with twin masts, but that doesn't mean that when she's using sails she's not extremely fast. The hull is reinforced steel, titanium and carbon fibers in all the right places, making the hull significantly lighter than in the normally be but also extremely strong." Raven then glanced over to the Blue Sea. The Blue Sea is much faster and more maneuverable than any Rebirth class ship, but these ships are built to do a hell of a lot of damage if they ever get it into combat. "How many of these ships are there?" Naruto asked, meeting his uncle's eyes. As he continued, Raven couldn't help but feel a little depressed. "There were 4 of them. Your grandmother and grandfather had the first 2 in the class but were lost in the opening of the war. Old Raven's ship here was the 3rd ship to be built, and this one was for your dear mothers and was still under construction at the time when the war started," Silver said, pointing to the 2 ships that were currently docked. "So she's been ready for active duty for about 5 years now, but there are a few things we've been working on to get her up to a lethal level right now, and she could do a whole lot of damage to an unsuspecting fleet," Raven continued. "You said that she was the only thing that could take out the dreadnought, is that true?" replied Naruto. "She still needs a good paint job and a figurehead, but for the most part is ready to go right now, but she's only equipped with a few of her weaponry at this very moment," Raven said, gesturing for his nephew to follow him on board the ship that resembled a plane. "There are currently only 10 of these guns on board right now. These are the primary guns, 5-inch high explosive contact round," Raven said, pointing to a nearby firearm. As Raven went on, these rounds can cause a serious amount of damage to the dreadnought's hull, but they won't be enough to sink her on their own. These however can. Naruto was genuinely quite impressed. Those are the main weapons of this ship. They are called rail guns or argies for short, Naruto said, pointing out a rather large set of guns that resembled nothing he had ever seen before. To his uncle, Naruto questioned, "How powerful are they?" Raven pointed to another weapon and said, "Very powerful, my young warrior. There are currently only 3 of them on this ship, with a spot for a 4th if needed. These are the modern high-yield swivel guns here, and these over here, these are the 50 caliber machine guns. Ships only has 2 swivel guns, but she is supposed to have up to 4 of these 50 calibers, but we don't have the necessary resources to make 2 more of them." After noticing that there seemed to be more weapon placement at the front of the ship, Naruto said, "Yes, you noticed the mortar is not finished, but while we do have the supplies to finish the construction of its components, it would just take too long to get it operational, but we are building them at this time." Other than one piece of equipment that looked incomplete, the ship was empty. Then Silver gestured for them to follow him to a lower deck entrance, saying, "Here we go, lad. This is the main gun deck and weapons locker for both information and weapons of war. All the extra ammunition is located behind these reinforced bunkers on this deck to protect the ship and not create an explosive situation." After that, everyone descended below the combat deck to the deck housing the crew and recreational areas. Naruto was impressed by what he saw and saw that the interior of the quarters was also equipped with heavy-duty armor plating, which was intended to protect the crew and their leisure spaces. Silver was admiring the kitchen and the surrounding area when Naruto and Raven noticed that the main galley, which was located at the back of the area, was quite impressive and had been thoughtfully designed to make the crew feel very comfortable while eating their meals. With a broad smile on his face, Silver praised the ship's dining area and connecting quarters for the cook. He was also impressed by the spacious cargo area for the ship's food supply, saying, "I've been wanting to put this kitchen to its test for some time now." "I have a feeling you're going to get an excellent chance for that, uncle. What about the deck below us?" Naruto replied. They exchanged glances before pointing to the stairway that led to the deck below. They then signaled for him to follow them into the ship's interior, where they saw 3 men leading a number of others while they worked on various projects, including integrating a set of seals into the ship's systems. Just pointing to the seals that one of the technicians was working on, the larger of the 3 said, "Make sure you get all that just right and check your damn work, otherwise it will blow up in your face and take out half the ship's electrical systems in the process." The 3 men in charge saw their guests and approached them, sensing that the captain might want something special done. The young man nodded his head and returned to work, being even more cautious than before because he knew that many people relied on his work being done perfectly. "So you're Raven's nephew. I have to admit that you don't look like the kind of person to be a captain of this kind of vessel, but then again Cyrus speaks quite highly of you." After giving a nod, Naruto said, "I do what I can. Tell me, can you do some kind of special work for me with the time we have left?" "What exactly do you have in mind?" asked the 3 men, who exchanged glances and had to confess that they were genuinely intrigued by this request. Naruto gave a brief explanation of his plan in the hopes that they could actually pull it off. To his amazement, not only was it feasible, but they were also taken aback by his original concept of giving this ship a ghost ship-like appearance, which might actually aid it in a real-life conflict. "That is one hell of a creepy concept, kid, but I like it. Anything else you can think of that might make this ship even more dangerous?" Then, with a broad, malevolent grin, Naruto asked, "Does she come in black?" FCS The Land of Waves, Phoenix. As the ship approached the documents and the Great Naruto Bridge, Jiraiya was preoccupied with observing his young charges and the gradually shifting landscape of the Land of Waves. His only thought was that he might see his young godson again and be able to explain his behavior. "I don't particularly condone what you did, you old pervert," said the Phoenix's captain as he approached him, adding, "I just hope you're trying to make amends with this kid and not make things for all of us any worse." "I honestly don't know what to do anymore, but I'm not the one who is truly afraid of him right now," Jiraiya said with a little chuckle. After glancing at the one-eyed Jonin, who was currently ignoring the young genin and correcting them when necessary, the captain said, "I don't want to be in his shoes." The lookout yelled, "Village deadhead," for everyone to hear before they could even speak. When they reached the village's port in their first glimpse, everyone turned to the starboard side of the ship, but when they got a clear view of the village, they gasped in surprise at what they saw. One of the crew members was heard exclaiming, what the hell happened here? The crew immediately went on high alert as they saw a Land of Wind naval vessel mortar to talk along with several cargo ships all flying the Land of Wind flag. They were looking at the ballistic tell that a large explosion of some kind had rocked part of the port area, leaving destroyed buildings in its wake. In an attempt to prevent a confrontation, the Phoenix's captain promptly started giving orders. "I want the guns on standby, no one makes a move unless they do as that, understood?" Jiraiya heard the captain say, "Well, this is unexpected, should I be concerned?" As he looked around the village, trying to figure out what had happened, he immediately received shouts of acknowledgement from his crew. Additionally, Jiraiya saw a number of sand ninjas standing on the dock. She said, "Yes, we should be concerned, that's Gaara over there on the dock." The captain exclaimed, "Oh great," as he started to feel his years catching up with him. WND Crow, off the land of Whirlpool's coast. Raven's personal ship, the WND Crow, cut through the water, demonstrating that even though it was still severely damaged, it could fight if necessary. This was fortunate because its younger sister ship still required an experienced crew, and Naruto had already shown himself to be a capable captain who could remain composed under pressure. The two ships were attempting to get into a perfect firing position because they could easily match each other in speed and maneuverability. Naruto's unfathomably high chakra levels allowed him to create a clone of himself, the crew, and the ship, which helped them in their training. Naruto followed his instincts and his ancestors' experience when he made a quick turn to starboard and yelled for the crew to start shooting. The clone ship was reduced to smoke in an instant as the shots struck the mast and hull, demonstrating how much the crew had improved over the previous 4 days of non-stop training. The young man nodded his head to his mentor and great uncle as the old man took the helm of his ship again and guided it back to the hidden port of Kal. Raven hurried over to his nephew and helped him up because he could tell that using his chakra in such a way was seriously draining his body. As his young niece Karen approached her cousin with a bottle of water, which he promptly drank, Raven observed, "You have done well, by tomorrow your black nightmare should be finished and ready to sail." Since he still had one more training day left, Naruto nodded his head and wondered what lay ahead, but he knew that they needed to get used to her and train with their ship. In an attempt to get an honest response, Naruto asked him, "Do you think they're ready, uncle?" As he piloted the ship into the dock, the elderly man looked at the ship, which only a short time before had been nothing more than an unfinished hull waiting to be given its name. "We don't know until they're actually faced with combat, but to be honest I think they have a strong chance of not only surviving but saving lives in the process, but only time will tell." As Naruto stood up, he turned to face his crew, who had gathered in front of him and were waiting to depart the ship. He gave them all a heartfelt thank you and said, "I thank you all, but tomorrow we ready to ship to leave port. We not only fight for our home here but for those who cannot fight." He said, "With that said, get a good night's sleep for tomorrow we join with our ship as one and begin our journey into infamy." The crew nodded their heads in agreement and waited for him to continue. Raven was filled with hope as he watched his nephew and niece emerge from the hidden dock area together, followed by two friends, while the crew started to shout and holler their excitement as they left the ship. "Tomorrow the real test will begin, my young warriors. Elements of the sea, Frozen Queen." Ken heard the ship's chief engineer yelling, "You boodle engines, why won't you work, you pieces of crap?" as he stood in the Frozen Queen's main engineering section, staring at the two engines. Following an eye roll, Ken said, "Good luck, just fix the damn things, okay? This thing is busted beyond repair, okay? I can get it working again for a while so it only be used in an emergency." "That's it," the Shear said, giving him one of those, "Are you crazy?" looks before pointing to the broken engine. Ken asked him, "What about engine 1? The engineer saw Ken nod his head and then proceeded to the ship's deck to inform his captain of the situation. "That's the only thing on this ship that's still working without any problems, okay? Just tell her not to blow up my engines, okay?" "So what's the damage?" Morgan asked her crewman as he approached her. He replied to her, "Engine number 2 is screwed, for the lack of a better word." "What about engine 1? She said in a frustrated tone. "Still operational, but he said to take it easy." "Can he fix engine 2 at all?" she asked, growing even more irate. Seeing her worry, Ken told his captain, he said only as an emergency, and he was very persistent about that. With urgency in her voice, she stated, "We have to get back home as soon as possible." "It's going to be all right, my lady, we will get back home," he said after giving her a nod. "It's not that, Ken, I got one of those bad feeling again," And on top of that, as we get closer to the land of spring, I feel something," she said, looking him in the eyes with a serious expression. "But why would the sword be sensing anything right now?" he asked, clearly understanding her concern. "I know this feeling all too well, Ken. When the Fire Lord joined us mariners, we felt the same thing even though we weren't in his presence, but this is so much stronger than anything ever felt before, and it's got me on edge," she stated to him. He hoped he was mistaken when he asked her, "So it's that kind of bad then?" "I just hope we get there before anything bad happens," she said, nodding her head once more. "I'm afraid so, as to get worse before it gets better." Compound Uzumaki, Land of Waves. After waking up early, Naruto proudly gazed out his new bedroom window at the remnants of his ancestral homeland. At that moment, the door opened, revealing not only his uncle but also his cousin. They entered the room with a middle-aged woman, who started setting up her equipment right away and gestured for them to approach her. Then she pointed to a set of clothes and gear and said, "If you're going to save people, you'll need to keep yourselves in one piece in order to do it. These are what we call the battle skins." Raven then looked at them and said, "Each of these shirts has been custom made for you both. Each one has specially constructed hard-plate armor that is very light and flexible in all the right places so not to restructure movement, and a material that is quite both bullets and knives resistant up to a point." The woman pointed to their pants and said, "The pants are form-fitting and have similar plates in but will not restrict your movement. The shoes are also built to give you the necessary traction you need but are not a hindrance in any way, knowing what you assassins like to do, running atop the rooftops and jumping around like you're frogs or something." The two of them started putting on their new clothes and equipment right away. Her remark caused everyone in the room to laugh, and she then gave them each a different top shirt. Naruto received a vest that was light red and black, which he put on but found to be tight around his back. After that, the woman gave them each a black trench coat with a hood. Each one was slightly different. Naruto's had a nine-tailed fox on the lower part of the coat and what appeared to be a holding area. The woman saw their expressions and said, "It's a form of magnetics and latches in the back of each one that holds them in place. Each one has been customized to your unique abilities." They both felt the same connection between their new codes and their secondary shirts. She then gave them their main weapons, which fit into place with ease while still allowing space for additional equipment in other areas. After giving them each a blowpipe to attach to the weapon port on their backs, the woman instructed them to put on their customized wrist blades. She then gave them armored guards to cover their wrist blades and explained what she was talking about, saying, "These act as both protection for your arms and a storage section for both your blowpipe poisons as well as the phantom blades spirit darts. You can hold a total of 15 sleep and berserker darts in the left bracer and 10 additional phantom darts in the right," Raven said, pointing to the blow dart ammunition. Both of them nodded as she presented them with bulky weapons. She gave Karen a specialized sniper rifle and Naruto a double-barrel shotgun of an odd design. "These are the bombs we use in combat the most and will be quite effective against your coming enemies on the ship," Raven said, opening a case containing several unusual items. The two of them promptly put their weapons away. The first one is a sticky berserker bomb which will detonate 5 seconds after hitting a target, whether it be a human or a wall, but remember to make sure there are no innocent people in the vicinity as the poison can kill in more than one way. He subsequently took out the second bomb. "This is the primary explosive we use and it can cause a lot of damage to both your enemies and the surrounding area, so use with caution. And finally, this small bomb is our high-yield smoke bombs which can literally cover an area in nothing but heavy smoke, and thanks to their size you can carry quite a few of them." Then, directing their attention to the bombs, Silver said, "The two anti-personnel weapons you can only carry about 6 the moment each and up to 10 of the smokes, so use them wisely, okay?" Naruto recognized the rather large scroll that Raven had produced as a summoning scroll right away. Raven said, "This is the Uzumaki clan summoning contract. It allows us to summon up our allies, the Eagles. Sign your names in blood and you will be accepted and able to summon them in battle." Knowing that this would be very helpful, the two of them nodded their heads quickly and started signing the contract. Raven picked up a rather large black flag with a distinctive design on it and said, "Your actions in the coming days will undoubtedly be seen as an act of piracy by our enemies, so it's only fitting that they fear the black flag once more." The two of them nodded as they followed their elders out of the room and into port. After giving the flag a quick glance, Haku and Suigetsu turned to face their captain and gave him a big smile and thumbs up. Naruto grinned at the flag after spotting a red outline of the assassin's symbol and a nine-tailed fox with a red outline in the middle, crushing a skull beneath one of its paws. Everyone on the crew enjoyed it, even though they knew it would frighten anyone who saw it. Haku then turned to look at the ship and couldn't help but wonder what its name was. So what is she called? After giving her a direct look, Naruto turned to face the crew and said, I already have a name for her. From this moment forward she will be known as Black Vixen. The crew applauded his decision as they began to feel more confident. He then stood in front of the Vixen's walkway and said, before we set out on this mission, I want to ask, is this really what you want? Loudly enough for everyone to hear. Everyone was taken aback when he went on, I know I need your help to save all the people out there who are now in danger because of the land of water, and I know that many of you have lost loved ones and friends thanks to their tyranny. There is a chance if we succeed that they will grant us pirates and put bounties on our heads so large they will think that we will not set foot into any civilized port. In silence, everyone listened carefully as the speaker said, they will do this because they will be afraid of us, they will threaten us with death, but what they do not know is that death is not our enemy but theirs. He went on, in the first golden age of piracy, they had a saying, a short and merry life have we. Both of his uncles simply nodded their heads in understanding with a broad smile as he went on, adding that their lives could be cut short at any time by an enemy bullet or simply falling off the ship's sail. Everyone in the room understood what he was describing, so they danced with death, but not to mock him, simply to welcome him when it was their time to move on from this world. But for those who fought against them, death would exact a terrible price from those men, sending them where they needed to be, even if it wasn't decked out in guiding the pirates to the next world and beyond. So with that said, who will sail with me, who will sail with the Black Fox into infamy and quite possibly legend? Who here sails for not only their own freedom but that of others? All who wish to sail the seas with me step forward, he said, glancing at each of them to try to predict what would happen next. Very well, then let's get her ready and done as we sail for the land of spring, said the entire crew, without a single one objecting. Knowing that they would be in the open ocean on their first journey into the unknown by the end of the day, each crew member gathered their personal belongings and any remaining equipment and got ready to set sail. Blue Sea is an international territory. Sortiara had to take a lot in after witnessing the Order Council essentially attempting to seize control of the land of whirlpools at all costs. The night was cool and calm as the Blue Sea conducted a brief patrol of the most likely route the water fleet would be traveling through on their way to the land of spring. She saw her father speaking to one of the ship's communication specialists, who appeared to have some good news for once, while the Blue Sea was in blackout, attempting to stay as undetectable as possible while patrolling this section of the ocean. Then Cyrus approached the ship's main deck, where his daughter was currently navigating, and said, well, here's some good news, at least they're on their way and should be at the land of spring by tomorrow morning at, I would say, noon. She was shocked that she would finally be able to witness this monstrosity, but the lookout yelled, ships off the port bow, before anyone could comment. What the hell have we gotten ourselves into? Was all Sortiera could say as she gazed at the enemy fleet. Then, turning swiftly to a number of men on deck, Cyrus said gravely, I need their position and speed as well as heading and when you expect them to arrive in Long Ice Harbor. The lead scientist approached Cyrus after the man had made a quick educated guess using their instruments and charts, saying, we expect them to arrive at some time between 11 to 11:30 tomorrow morning, sir. Sortiara asked, what we do? As soon as she realized they had a problem. We get back to the land of spring as fast as we can now. No matter what happens tomorrow, we have stalled them so that the kid can get there and change the tide of the battle in our favor. While perusing his personal belongings, one of the crew members cursed and said to his captain, they're protecting the dreadnought heavily. He observed his daughter intently as her mind worked through the information she had just been given. It's the one thing that can change the battle in their favor. Without it they will have to take on the fort, which could be a suicide mission normally, but with the dreadnought they not only do a whole lot of damage to the normal fleet but can take on the fort with only minimum casualties. She hoped she was correct when she said, that's why you need Naruto and this super ship of his. The Rebirth class is the only thing that can both tear apart and cut that ship into two pieces, so it is no longer a threat. The Blue Sea is packing the biggest guns that this fleet has, but it's not enough to take that thing out. So without that ship we don't have a chance in hell is what you're saying, he responded. After giving a nod, he said gravely, that's exactly what I'm saying, just start praying for a miracle. The land of spring, Long Ice Bay. With the obvious intent to go to war, Cyrus and the Blue Seas crew observed the water fleet approaching them and said, "I need a status on all of those ships, especially the Dreadnought." While examining the Dreadnought up close on a computer screen, one of the crew members was shocked to see, "Captain, they have Generation 2 mortars on board the ship, their land of spring tech." "It's their technology?" was the shocking revelation that caught everyone off guard. "Yes, sir, but it's very old. They're using Generation 6 now, but I do know that a month before Dodo was killed they had perfected the Generation 2 tech and were even mass producing. This explains why some of the inventory was missing when we get an inventory when he was overthrown," the young writer replied. "It's beginning to make sense now. That's why the Templars took over this land in the first place. It's their research and development department and they want it back," Cyrus said after realizing the purpose of the invasion. This startled and shocked everyone, and one of the lookouts said, "Sir, they are signaling," so that everyone could hear him. Cyrus asked, "What's the message?" The man answered, "They are asking for a negotiation with the Lady Daimyo, sir." "What do we do?" Sortiara asked, turning to face her father. He held up his watch, which showed that it was 11:15, and said, "We grant them their negotiation. It will buy us the time we need for them to get here. So we have to hold them for over an hour. We buy all of the time we can. Pray nothing goes wrong." 11:19 The land of Spring's main audience hall. The Spring Daimyo awaited him in the main meeting hall, where a regal-looking man with a strange sword at his hip bearing a fire symbol walked down the corridor. The man was a high-level admiral, and he bowed to her in a gesture of respect, but it was obvious from his face that he had none. "I am so relieved that you agreed to negotiate an end to hostilities with me, my lady. It would be a shame if your people were to have anything happen to them over a simple misunderstanding. You have 23 warships entering my bay and closing on my harbor, and among them is a super dreadnought. A simple misunderstanding does not begin to cover what is happening here." He wasn't accustomed to hearing this kind of speech, particularly from a woman. "I would be very careful what you say, my lady, as wars have started for far less." Without holding back, she said, "Then listen to your own advice, Admiral, and I would get to the point if I were you. Fine, your uncle was tasked with developing certain technologies for us. We've come for them and we expect payment for all the trouble you have cost us." Curious about his reaction, she asked, "And if we refuse, Admiral?" With a look of pure hatred on his face, he addressed her, saying, "Then I hope pain and death is something you enjoy, Lady Koyuki. Give us a few minutes to discuss things." After saying, "Don't take too long, the clock is ticking, my lady," he left the room, closing the doors behind him to prevent any noise from escaping. "No matter what we do, they're going to attack us. That seems pretty evident. We can't give up our technology to these people. If we do, there's no telling how many people are going to die in the future, and that blood will be on our hands," one of her military strategists stated. The Admiral didn't have to wait long, he thought, as he walked back into the room that was his today, but she nodded her head in agreement to him and gestured for the doors to open again. "I hope you come to the right decision, my lady. It is not only my decision but that of my council that your proposal is unacceptable to us. We cannot in good conscience hand over weapons to people who've already committed countless acts of genocide against their own citizens and to have also been implicated in slave operations as well as forced occupations of several smaller countries and territories," Koyuki said to him with a defiant expression on her face. With a look of pure hatred, he said, "Very well, if that is your decision, you can all die. We will not attack first, but if you do attack us, I hope you fear death a lot." 11:28 Spring Battle Fleet, Long Ice Bay. Through his spyglass, Cyrus observed the water admiral boarding a ship and then giving orders, at which point all of the ships started to move forward with a single goal. The crew immediately jumped into action, wondering who would make the first big move. "Here they come. Battle stations, get the chakra shields up and running right now and load the guns for immediate use." "All right, war it is then. All available speed ahead, but keep some of it in reserve and close the distance," the dreadnought said, firing at them with its mortars while still barely out of range, so they didn't have to wait long.